Yeah. So basically, it comes down to the idea that women do not have agency. They're not capable of taking responsibility for their actions. They're not capable of um, understanding necessarily when they've made a mistake and so on. And so, your tweet was basically the idea in your tweet was that women should have to pay the consequences of their decisions, right? Of what they voted for and so on. My position is
Yeah.
that it's insane to expect that women are not capable of making of rational thought, and so to expect them to take accountability for their actions is just insane. And like, I get where you're coming from. They did vote for this, but if you look at something like Genesis 3, for example, right? It talks about the sort of burden that women have. They want to rule over men, and because they're not strong and so on, right? They have this anxiety. Um, and so, like, of course they're gonna vote for insane shit. Like, fucking, of course they are. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they can take accountability for their actions. They can't.
They can't.
They cannot. I mean, so let me ask you this. Honestly,
So
I think this
do
question.
hang on. Let me.
What,
Well, hang on. Hang on. Hang
go.
on. Hang on. I just let you go, right? So chill out. Let me ask you a couple of questions. The first question that I have for you is: Are you a Christian?
How is that relevant?
Well, because you quoted Genesis.
Oh, I am not a Christian, no, but I understand that you are, and I also I do think the Genesis
Well,
accounts.
then why are you quoting the Bible at me if you're not a Christian though?
Well, because even if I'm not Christian, I can understand that there's wisdom in that book that transcends, uh, whether or not the religion is actually real. Let's say,
So you
right?
mean you mean so you mean from a pragmatic sense, there's some things in there that you can agree with?
Absolutely. Yep. A lot, in
Okay,
fact.
got it. Okay, got it. So the first argument to this for accountability, I would just put in the Christian views. Do you believe that Christians think that women can go to hell?
I'm probably sure. Yeah. Yeah. Probably.
Okay, well then it seems that God must give them accountability, right?
You know, again, your so maybe, but your particular philosophy that I've heard you espouse many. You one question, right?
It's the opposite. No, I fully believe that they have agency and should be held to account for their agency like they always have been.
Okay, so here's the thing though, right? So did
Hmm.
you or did you not coin this idea of force doctrine?
I did.
Okay. And so just to make sure I understand, can you give me like a very brief overview of what force doctrine is, just to make sure that I understand?
It's a descriptor that rights come from men,
Right. Okay, perfect.
exclusively
So
come from
so
men.
uh, so a woman's right to vote comes from men. Do you agree or disagree?
The enablement of the appeal to the right to keep the vote would go to men. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so of course, if we give women the right to vote, right? It's obvious that they're going to vote for retarded shit. Would you agree, or is that too far?
No, I don't agree.
No, you don't agree. Okay, why not?
Well, so I think that that women are more heavily prone towards being propagandized. But
Agree?
yeah, but the problem there is that that's a double-edged sword. You realize that. So while it is the case that they're good or they're more susceptible to being propagandized than men, that should actually make the job easier of propagandizing them, right?
Well, yes and no. It depends on who has the megaphone, right? And right now,
Well,
people who
there we
hate us have
go.
the megaphone.
So hang on. So there we go. It depends on who has the megaphone. Well, there used to be an idea of that women kept women accountable, and they actually did do this. I mean, we can see historic example after historic example of this. So women had before suffrage came around, they had the kind of like moral high ground on things. So let me give you an example of how powerful that was. So you agree with me that the right for women to vote is a relatively new invention, right?
Of
This
course,
is
yeah.
relatively new. Yeah, yeah. But tell me this then: before the 19th Amendment was passed, how did they get prohibition passed?
Well,
How was the women's movement able to get prohibition passed even though they had no enfranchisement?
it's the same way that the Bolshevik Revolution happened in Russia. Like that might seem like a bit of a oversell on some level, but I don't think it is. It came from huge propaganda campaigns from outside forces, essentially.
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question isn't were there possibly special interests that wanted to get rid of booze or something like this. The question is like how were they able to have that much influence even if they couldn't vote? And this was
Well,
primarily women, by the way. This was almost exclusively women.
yeah, I agree. And look, even to you know, hammer your point home a little harder, even the whole saloon thing in what was that, the 1870s or 1880s, right? They basically destroyed saloons even before they got alcohol outlawed.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
So you had women who, but why? My question to you is why is it that they were able to get an actual amendment passed to outlaw booze before they had an amendment passed to vote?
well,
How?
so two things. First of all, I would say that women are basically a hive mind on some level, right? If you want to understand what a particular woman wants, just look at what other women want, and that will tell you. And so they're basically a hive mind on some level. And so when this like it's basically memetics, right? It spreads through a population, and then they start henpecking their men. And if the men are not strong enough, don't have boundaries, and so on, then they let women do whatever they want. In a similar way that like certain parents are really just horrible at disciplining their children.
You're looking at this view from a view of presentism. Like not you're not looking at this from a historic lens at all, clearly. So when you're talking about memetics and things like this, you're talking about a time when there was newspapers, newspapers. There wasn't even telecommunications
So
really yet,
so
right?
hang on.
So so the thing,
We have to
hang on,
pause
my
here for
turn,
one
my
second.
turn, my turn, my turn. I didn't interrupt you at all. Okay, so hang on, chill out. This wasn't mimetics, okay? And the reason this kind of fallaciousness of presentism is there, you're making a comparison in modernity towards how women used to behave. So women used to have a much better moral high ground because they didn't vote. They weren't considered political cogs. And because they weren't involved in politics, they weren't considered political cogs. And so they were able to do moralization better. And guess what? In some cases, they did a pretty good job. They did a pretty good job of moralization, right? The idea, for instance, of men whoring about and the fact that they needed to take care of families and things like this, a lot of that was from women moralizing pre-feminism. Those are all good things, right? They're good for society, made society better and stronger. And yeah, I think that they are not only capable of being accountable, but I also think that they have agency, and I think they've always had agency. And I think
So
it's foolish. Like let's start with this. How would you just what would you describe agency as being?
so agency is the ability to enact your will in the world and then to be able to enforce it, right? So agency requires a certain amount of enforcement. It's like desire plus
No,
the
no,
ability
I do.
to
Well,
enforce it on
I
someone
don't.
else.
Yeah, I reject this definition. Can you, if this is not a proprietary definition, can you show me anybody else who shares this definition of
So
enforcement with
so
agency?
so I just asked ChatGPT real quick. It says agency is the ability to originate action rather than simply react.
That's not.
So
But you said enforcement. It's different.
is it?
It's different. Yes. Enforcement entails force. It's right in the word. Enforcement. right?
So here's the thing, right? So let's go back to
I'm
what
getting an echo now, dude. I don't. You gotta switch back to whatever you had. You gotta switch back to whatever you had. Hello?
Sorry, I was just trying to switch back. Is it better now?
Yeah, now it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So all right, a couple things here, right? If the ability to have agency, right? If so, what I consider to be agency, right? If you come to me and say you're now my slave, right? Like I know you would never do this, but just for the sake of argument, you come to me, maybe you hold me at gunpoint or whatever. You say you're now my slave, right? I have the ability to fight back and like not necessarily, men have the ability to enforce their will in a way that women do not.
Yeah, but
So that,
that's just begging. You're just question begging. Like I want to make sure our terms are clear here so that we know what we're talking about and we're not speaking past each other. When
sure,
you
yeah.
say agency, are you giving me a proprietary definition or not?
So agency is basically the ability to perceive options and then to go.
Hang on, dude. Answer the question first, please. Are you giving me a proprietary definition or not?
I don't
Oh
believe
my God, stop. You gotta stop switching, dude.
I'm not doing it on purpose. It's unfortunately I'm in my car and it keeps trying to switch over to my Bluetooth. I apologize for that.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn it off right now and hopefully that'll make
It's
it
ear
better.
it's ear aids.
Any better now?
Yeah, it's perfect now.
Perfect, great.
Nope, there's a bad echo.
Oh, how about now?
Testing, testing, testing.
Testing.
Nope, still an echo.
Okay, hang on one second. Let me um let me see what I can do here. One sec. Uh, go ahead and why don't we do this? Tell me what your definition of agency is while I try to figure out this audio issue.
Well, I don't. I couldn't even hear what the last thing he said. I think I'm to everybody who's in this space right now. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure that your eardrums are officially blown. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. Um, but yeah, just gonna wait for this guy.
So apologies, Andrew. Is it
Yeah,
better
no
now?
worries. Yeah, it's good.
Perfect, perfect. Why don't we do this? Let's go based on what your definition of agency
No,
is.
let's not. No, let's not. Let's make sure that because remember, you're making the positive claim here. The positive claim you're making is women don't have agency, right? That was your claim.
That
So
that
if that's
is
the claim, yeah, if that's the claim, that's fine, right? I just want to make sure that when you say agency, that are we talking about a proprietary definition or are we talking about another definition you can point to so we can see if it fits the criteria of agency? If you have a proprietary definition, that's fine, but I need to know what it is. Otherwise, we'll spend the entire time fighting over agency rather than getting to whatever the point is.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't care whose definition of agency we take, right? Like, I I understand the notion of defining your terms, and then we can go from there. So
Yeah.
the way that I think about agency is the ability to perceive your options in the world, and then to
Okay.
go.
Okay. But dude, wait. Before you tell me what it is, can you please answer if it's proprietary or not?
Um, so by proprietary, you mean unique to me?
Your own definition. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
your own definition of it.
I mean,
Okay, got
I
it.
would say that we all have our own definition of most things, but yes, on some level, my definition is probably proprietary. Although I did look it
Yeah,
up in a
I
number
think.
of different sources.
Yeah, look, I think you're kind of correct that we all have something of a proprietary definition for most things we say, but they tend to at least overlap or have a root in something, right? So if I say woman, you say woman, we know what we're talking about. We're probably not
Adult
going to
human
ask each other
female.
to. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is I don't think that that would be a proprietary definition, though. Do you?
No. Well, I'm on some level. There's tons of people who think that a 6 foot tall man with a cock is a woman.
Yeah, but I would say that they have the proprietary definition then.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So so let's see.
So here. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's see if we can come to a definition of agency that we can agree on. And I would suggest
Okay.
that since you don't necessarily like mine, and that's fair enough, maybe you can tell me what yours is, and I'm happy to work from that.
Okay. Sure. Let's see if we can pull one up here. Yeah. So this is the one I would broadly go with. Action or intervention to produce a particular effect.
Right. Action
That would be agency.
or intervention to produce a
Yeah,
particular effect.
action. Yeah, action or intervention. So I would maybe argue that there's many animals that don't have agency, right? Because they're not taking an action to produce necessarily a particular effect. They can't foresee that, right?
Agreed.
And so we
Yeah.
would deal with yeah, and we would deal with people who were mentally retarded in a different way too, because they're gonna have agency, but they're gonna have limited agency, right?
Agreed. Yeah. So would you agree then that women have limited agency on some level because of their uh, diminutive stature relative to men?
No.
Why?
Well, because they can still take actions with a perceivement of the desired effect.
Right.
So
But
I think you're
any
just conflating. I
so
think
hang
you're
on, hang on.
conflating agency with enforcement.
So hang on. But it's not necessarily right because any right that women have is granted to them by men. Do you? I think you
Well,
agree with that, right?
it's appealed to men. Yes.
Okay. So how is that different from what I said?
Well, because I can envision scenarios in which women could grant themselves rights that men just don't give a shit about. You know, like I don't know what that would be. Like I don't know, something absurd maybe. Like I they can wear
The
Crocs on Sunday.
Yeah, the
You know,
right to wear purple lipstick. Yeah.
right, right. But and men don't necessarily grant that to them, right? But if men wanted to take it away, women would have to appeal to them not to. They couldn't just be like, no, no, fuck you. We're going to do it anyway.
Okay, so that's what I think of as agency, right? Is the ability to say fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, then we have a distinct difference in agency, and I reject your definition as being far too limited. And I think that the word force in that case takes precedent, not agency.
Fair enough, but like fundamentally, right? Everything
So,
comes
like
down
here, I
to
can give
force.
you. Well, hang on, I can give you an example of this. In fact, right? So, do you think that that it's the way that men are hardwired versus the way women are hardwired that gives them more access to account things like accountability and this type of thing?
Well, I would say I'm going to answer your question, but just give me a minute or two to sort of elaborate here.
Well, I just want to demonstrate my claim first, if you don't mind. So I'll just demonstrate why I think it's not agency that you're talking about. So would you agree with me that you think that men are more hardwired towards things like accountability and this type of thing, rational thinking, than women are? They're hardwired for it.
I would say that men and women are essentially different species for all intents and purposes in terms of our cognition and our biology. Obviously, we can
Okay, so
interbreed, but we're very, very different.
yes, yeah. So men are more. So then you agree with me? Men are more hardwired for this, from your view?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Okay. Okay. So then let's envision for a second that I don't know what the means are, but one day we wake up and all of the women are twice as physically strong as the men, are they suddenly going to be hardwired differently though when it comes to these terms of accountability and things like this? Are they suddenly going to have agency then?
No, no.
And men are not, and men are not going to have agency, right? No, the answer is
So,
no. They're not going to suddenly have it. Hang on. So if they're not suddenly going to have agency, then this idea of the conflation with force makes no sense.
so it's both physiological and psychological, right? So the physiological aspect is the one that we can see the most. The idea of force is the one that we can see the most. But this actually does come from the differences in cognition between the sexes, right? So men are the sex that are much more men are the one that fight all the wars and do all the hard jobs.
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay, generally speaking, yes. So it's fair to
Yeah.
okay, like women aren't capable of creating society. Would you agree with that?
To a limited basis, they can.
To a limited basis, they can, right? A very limited basis. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say to a limited basis only for men too, because of reproduction, right? They could still have, but they would have all the advancements. So
Right.
if we could envision a world where men can't reproduce but live forever, they could still live in an advanced society. It would be much more difficult for women to do so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So
Okay.
is it fair to say broadly, right, and generally on the aggregate that yeah, that all of the rights essentially, because this is the case, all of the rights that women have on some level, in some way, flow from uh, flow from men granting those rights.
Yes.
Perfect. And
Well,
so,
ultimately, they would be granted through appeal. Yes.
okay, so the issue that I had with your tweet is you basically said that women deserve to get raped, especially white women
No, I
deserve to
didn't.
get
No, I
raped by
didn't.
third
Don't
world
fucking
trash.
don't lie. Okay.
That
Stop
that
lying. Stop
I'm
lying.
I'm really not trying to lie. That is actually my
Okay. Well,
perception of what
here.
you said.
Well, here. Okay. Well, let's get into that then. So now your true colors are revealed. So, uh, was that tweet a quote tweet?
Um, yeah, it was the one that you quote tweeted where you basically let me go and
Yeah. Hang
find
on.
it.
So yeah. So I quote tweeted. Well, I deleted the tweet. I deleted the tweet because I was getting flagged. But you can still pull up what I tweeted. But did you read the quote tweet? Tell the truth. Did you actually read the quote tweet?
I absolutely did read the quote tweet, but do I remember
Okay, and
exactly
what
what it
was
said off
the?
the top?
Yeah, well, okay, well, give me the gist of what it was about.
Yeah. So it was about this situation in Scotland, and you were basically saying like women are asking men for help, and we're not going to give it to them because this
No, no,
is
no.
what they voted.
I'm not asking. I'm not asking about what I said. I asked if you read the quote tweet, the tweet that I was quoting.
I did, but I don't remember what it said off the top of my head. To be frank.
Yeah, so then you don't have any context. So since you have no context, how can you make the claim that that's what I was saying?
So
How?
so your actual words, uh,
Uh-huh.
your actual words were essentially, "You're now asking men for help. No, we're not going to give it to you because you voted for this."
No, that wasn't my exact words.
It was pretty
You're
fucking
wrong.
close. It was pretty close.
No, you're wrong.
Okay,
But
tell me.
what was I what
So
but what was I
Andrew, hang on,
referencing? Hang
hang
on.
on one
Instead
second.
of being a
I'm not.
pedant, no, you
I'm
hang on 1 second. Tell me what I was quote tweeting. Give everybody the context.
I'm not.
What was it that I was responding to?
It had to
What was
do
I
with.
responding? You don't
It,
know.
it had to do with that girl in Scotland with the fucking knife in
It had
the
nothing.
ass.
It didn't have anything to do with her. Actually, it really had nothing to do with her at all. Right? That was a catalyst that was being used by this chick to make a point about men being bad. And yet didn't even read the fucking tweet that I quoted. And so instantly you jump to a conclusion, and here's why. Because a bunch of Andrew haters came in and started to tweet this as though that was the context when it was clear they didn't read the quote tweet. So now I'm going to read the quote tweet for you. The thing that I was responding to that you clearly didn't read, and then carefully omitted here as you made this claim that I said it's okay for white women to get raped. You fucking lunatic. But here, I'll read it for you. Okay, this was the part I was responding to. Quote, this is from this woman. It seems like the boots on the ground revolution against migrant crime will be led by the ladies who have learned the hard way no one's coming to save them. Not their fathers or brothers, not the men in the community, not the state. They're already in the thick of the battle while the men are still living in fear of the state. When men aren't willing to risk the wrath of the state to protect their daughters, and their daughters must carry that burden themselves because the only other option is death by migrant gang rape. Now, what is she trying to convey there, dude?
She's trying to convey that men have abdicated the responsibility that we allowed the politicians to send infinite third world trash into Western countries and completely destabilize our societies and so on. That's basically what she's saying.
So no, what she's saying is that in their country, if one of these British guys sees this happening, they're not going to do anything to stop it, right?
Well, why? Maybe
literal word. Hang on, literal words, right? No one's coming to save them. Not their fathers or brothers, not the men of their community, not the state. Nobody's going to help them whatsoever, right? None of them. So what she's doing is she's demonizing men in the UK, the ones, by the way, who are joining the soccer hooligans and beating the fuck out of these guys every chance they get. They roll up on them constantly. They pull women's asses out of the fire all the time when women were the ones who put them in that situation. And so my quote tweet was, well, you fucking voted for it, and now you have to deal with the consequences. And a bunch of these dishonest fuckers acted like I was talking about this 14-year-old girl when clearly I was talking to the chick I quote tweeted. Do you understand now? Like, do you get it now?
Yeah, I totally understand. And Andrew, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not an Andrew hater. I actually I had a woman compare me to you recently, and I actually took it as a compliment.
Well, then how did you get to Andrew wants white girls to get raped by immigrants then? How did you get to that?
Well, I would say that
what in the world, in any form of content you've ever seen from me when I've defended Brexit, I've defended the anti-immigration policies to the UK on Piers Morgan, of all things, said that these guys need to get their fucking heads split and these rape gangs are out of fucking control. What thing of my content would ever have convinced you or anybody else that I would be advocating that girls get raped? What? How could you ever come to that absurd ass conclusion? Just tell me the logical process.
Right. So basically, here's how it goes. Would you agree with me that the 19th Amendment was probably a mistake? I think
no. I don't. Dude, I don't want to hear any of that shit. I want you to tell me how you got from watching my content. I like Andrew. I like his takes. Blah 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 blah. To I legitimately believe that Andrew's on Twitter advocating that white women get raped by immigrants. I really want to hear how you came to that conclusion.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm going to try to lay it out for you. The idea that women are rational agents who are capable of taking responsibility for their actions is just like, there's a quote from the movie As Good as It Gets, right? And someone asks the guy, how do you write women so well? He says, well, I think of a man and I take away reason and accountability, right?
I know the quote.
And that's a really good definition on some level, right? And so they just they don't know. again, this is why I brought up Genesis 3 at the very beginning, right? It talks about how the curse or the consequence that God gave to women after the whole Garden of Eden incident was that they want to rule over their husbands, right? They want to rule over men, even
Yeah.
though
Well,
this is
just so
disordered.
you, no, that's not the theme from Genesis that women want to rule over men.
It literally says that
No.
Genesis 3 like 10 or something, right? It talks about she's going to have pain in childbirth, and then it also says that your desire will be for your husband or something, which means that they like, again, if you look at the context of the story, right? Eve is the one who ate from the tree first before Adam, right? And would
Yes,
you agree
because
that
she
this
was tricked.
she
Correct. She was
yeah,
tricked.
she was tricked. Um yeah,
Hmm.
sure. And so
And did God punish her?
yeah, well, of course, right? And what
That
was the
means
punishment?
that means
What?
that means God. What that means, God thinks that she has agency and accountability, bro. Do you see? I want you to stop real quick. So we're going from Genesis. It looks like 3:17 and 19, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, hang on. All right. You've eaten from the tree I've commanded you. You shall not eat it. Let's move down to. All right. Cursed is the ground for your sake, and toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. You shall eat the herb of the field. The sweat of your face shall eat the bread till you return to the ground, for out of which you were taken. Yeah. So I paraphrased that fine.
Yep.
To the woman he said, you will greatly multiply your sorrow and conception, and your pain shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Okay.
Okay, so that second part is what I'm referring to. And this is about
Hmm.
disordered relationship dynamics fundamentally.
Okay. Well, what's your point here, man?
Right. So well, let me ask you this. What do you think that verse means? Your desire shall be for your husband and he shall rule over you. Well, like especially the part your desire shall be for your husband and he shall rule over you. Why is that a curse?
Well, so this is more complex than you're making it out to be. It's not just an idea of a curse, but it's an idea of a fallen state.
It's an idea
So
of a consequence on
they're
some level, right?
well, they're both yeah, but they're both. But what's happening is now they're embracing life. They don't have. I mean, again, I don't know what this has to do with anything, but the idea here is that they were made to not die, and now they have to experience the world in death, and part of that is the protectorate nature of men and the desire. Now there's a desire there for woman towards man, for man to be the head. So I don't know if that's dysfunctional relationship. um, I don't know if that's dysfunctional. I think you would consider that functional, right?
Are are you the head of your household, Andrew? Are you the
Yeah,
leader of your household? And if so, why?
sure, sure.
Why?
Well, in my sense, because I have a Christian household, and Christian households are headed by men and patriarchs.
Okay, and this is actually one of the things that I think is great about Christianity. Why are Christian households headed by patriarchs fundamentally? Like, if you could, dumb it down for me.
Well, there's multitudes of reasons. One is the reflection of Christ incarnate and how it is that he's the head of the church, and women are a reflection of the body of church, the body of believers. Another is for the sake of protection, which is why you used to have under Christianity what were called coverture or coverage laws. It's the idea that you were putting your protective cloak over a woman. There's a lot of different reasons, but
So
what are you kind of getting at here, though? Is what my
yeah,
question is.
yeah, yeah. So fundamentally, I'm getting at I'm getting at like what are the correct dynamics between men and women, and I think what you just described are actually the correct dynamics between men and women. I think that women need to have direction from strong men in their lives in order to make good decisions. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but yeah, sure. But I see where you're going here. Okay, let's get through. We'll get through the Socratic end of it, and then I'll do the Socratic end back the other way. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. The answer is yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do, bro. Go ahead. Keep going.
right. And so to allow them to vote and then to think that they should have accountability for the decisions that they make without input from men is just like this is insane and disordered in my opinion.
Ah, I see. So let's see if I can do the Socratic method back. So, do you agree that men are supposed to be the heads of households in the patriarchs in society?
Obviously, yes.
And do you agree
However,
that that's
with
hang
with
on, bro, hang on. I just answered yes or no to your questions. Answer
okay,
yes or no to mine.
yeah, okay.
Do you believe that it is the case that that is the biblical way things should be?
I believe that the reason why it was written down in the Bible that way is because that's actually how it is. But yes, fundamentally,
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, and are women under the Christian ethic supposed to submit to male authority?
they are supposed to submit to male authority. However,
They are supposed. My turn for the Socratic method. Okay, so they are supposed to submit to male authority. And when Eve was rebelling in the garden, was she submitting to male authority?
well, yes, she was submitting to the serpent. I assume he's male.
No, that's not male authority. That's not a human male. She was not submitting to male authority. She was subverting male authority. She was subverting it. So the thing is what happened? There was a punishment and accountability was taken. That's what happened. So the thing is like you can't have this idea. And by the way, sewing circle Christians do this all the time because and it's a super retarded take. Yes, it's true that men are supposed to lead in society and be the patriarchs, right? But you can't lead absent submission.
Well,
So
here's
the idea,
force doctrine,
like
bro.
here's the
Force doctrine.
here's the
Yes, you can lead
right.
absent
So
submission. You can force
so so
submission.
so then hang on. So then really what you're saying is that the men in the UK need to force women to submit to them.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
And
Yes.
what are the immigrants in the UK doing right now?
Raping, pillaging, being fucking
Yeah,
completely
so
disruptive.
forcing the women to submit to them, right?
Right. And so yeah, and
So hang on, so
honestly,
hang on, so hang on. I just want to make sure I got this right. That you think that the men in the UK need to forcibly make the women submit, right? And that's the right thing to do. It's only the wrong thing to do when the immigrants are forcing the women to submit. Why is
correct.
that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Why
yeah,
is that? Because
because
isn't it the case? Isn't it
the
the case
immigrants don't
that
belong there, bro. They don't belong there.
oh, well,
That's
wait.
why.
Isn't it the case? Oh, isn't it the case, though, that you just got them telling me that these men are in dereliction of their duty of leadership and that if they were showing proper leadership, they would force the women to fucking submit? So aren't the immigrants there the ones then who would be taking that spot by your logic?
They are taking that spot. Yeah, they are.
Oh, okay. I got
They
it. So then
literally
you're
are.
saying that the most godly men in the UK are the immigrants.
No, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I can see how
Well,
you would try to twist it that way,
that's the
but
necessary entailment of your position. Here's your necessary entailment of your position. The men are in dereliction of duty, right? They're not acting as the heads and patriarchies that they're supposed to be because you're not forcing them bitches to submit to their will. And along
where
come these immigrants and they're like, hey, if you're going to not do that shit, we are going to do that shit. So then they force them to do it. How is that an entailment of that not them acting exactly how you're saying that the men there should be acting?
yeah, no, I look, force like fundamentally might makes right on some level, right? And so if the immigrants are doing what the British natives won't, then like they're gonna win. It sucks. It like I don't like it, right? But that's basically the way the world works.
Yeah.
You know,
So
you
then
get enough
basically
if you get enough people. If you get enough people together and who say this is what's going to happen, then this is what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong.
I get it. So what you're saying though is like the British men should be fucking raping all the chicks, not the immigrants.
Well, no, not raping. So here's the difference.
Why not?
Right?
Hang on. Why not?
Hang on. So
hey, why not though?
so we're talking about two completely different populations, right? We're talking about people who were raised in the West with a certain culture and moral compass and so on, versus third world trash that doesn't have the same culture or moral compass.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting though that you say that there's a moral compass? Isn't it baked into the Christian ethos not to forcibly make people submit?
No, it's actually not. I mean, like Paul said that shit, but like Jesus didn't say that. Look at Matthew 10:34.
Well, I'm sorry if you don't. Okay, yeah, let's look at Matthew. You want to let's get into the Sermon on the Mount of Matthew. Let's go through it step by step right now. Then read it out loud. Start reading it out loud.
Just give me 1 second. It starts in Matthew 6. So 1 second.
Go ahead. Start reading it out loud. Tell me all about the forcible submission. I want to hear all about it.
Well, it's actually not in the Sermon on the Mount, but
oh, it's not? That's crazy. That's crazy. It's not. So you're selective. You're selecting one thing out of Matthew. And by the way, if it's in Matthew, then chances are pretty good that it's in the other two Gospels as well, the Synoptic Gospels, right?
Well, the Gospels completely contradict Matthew, each other in a number of different important ways.
Okay.
The Gospels are very contradictory, bro.
I see. So now we're back to Christianity's not true, right? Christianity's not true.
That's not what I said. I said the Gospels contradict each other. That's a very specific claim.
Yeah. Well, you just got done saying that Paul. Well, you just got done saying that Paul. So I'm guessing that you're an anti. But the thing is like you can't be a Christian without Paul. That's part of the Gospels, whether you like it or not. That's part of the Gospels. And this idea that you have of forcible submission is not part of Christian ethics. It's not.
Jesus says,
so the thing is,
Jesus says specifically, a quote directly from your prophet. He says, "I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." What do you make of that?
Oh no, he said more than that. He said, "I came to set brother against brother. I came to set mother against son and father against daughter."
Agreed. Yeah.
So what he's talking. Yeah, so you need to understand the context there. And by the way, you'll find this in all three of those, okay? And here's the context. The context is talking about a spiritual battle. It's saying that, hey, I'm not here to make nice and make cozy and things like this, right? I'm going to be pitting families against families because my message and people who convert over to it are going to have a tough time. They're going to have a tough time. And he's right. They did. They all had a tough time, and Christians are still persecuted. And he promised that was what was going to happen if you followed his message. And that's exactly what he's talking about in Matthew. Do you think that he's literally saying in Matthew that I'm here so that I can have you men go physically make these women submit to your will? No, that's not there at all, bro. It's not there at all.
No, but here's the thing, right? Biologically, from a biological perspective, the disparity of force between men and women is just fucking obvious biological reality, right?
Who's arguing this? This is critical of force doctrine.
Right. I agree. And so what the only quibble that I had with your tweet, right, was that it seems to be contradictory to your idea of force doctrine. This idea that women should take accountability for their actions is not compatible with the notion of force doctrine. It's just not.
No, it's the most compatible notion with force doctrine. By the way, you haven't demonstrated it, and I've rebutted every point you've made. But I'll just go ahead and give you an easy synopsis for how it not only doesn't rebut force doctrine, but just enforces it, okay? Do you agree that women have to appeal to men for their rights? They have to?
Women have to appeal to men for their rights, yes.
Okay, and whatever it is that they're calling a right, whatever that is, they're going to have to appeal to men for that, right?
Agreed.
Okay, great. Do you also agree that men can take their fucking rights anytime they want? They can take them collectively.
No, I don't agree with that. At least not in the current
Oh, you don't.
context. Because, hang on, because the
Uh-huh.
state has a monopoly on violence and it enforces women's rights, right? And granted, there are some men who are complicit in that, but I would argue that they're weak simps fundamentally.
Do you understand that? How then your whole argument falls apart immediately. How can it be that you believe that women have to appeal to men for their rights, right? But men can't take their rights when they want to.
So do you
It's the
agree that
same.
there?
It's the same exact. Hang on. It's the same exact concept. If you say in modernity they don't have to, then I would just say, well, then in modernity they don't have to appeal to men for their rights either, right?
So would you agree that there are different
Hang
classes
on.
of men?
Answer that question. Answer the question, dude.
There's
Isn't it the
it's
case
more
that there's
complicated than the yes or no.
yeah,
Look,
yeah.
I would
Is it? You know, it's not. It's not. You're just evading. You're just evading. Isn't it a
I'm
logical entailment that if you have to appeal to the state or have to appeal to men for your rights, that men could take your rights anytime they want? Otherwise, why would you have to appeal to them for them?
okay. Fine. I'll agree with you for the sake of argument. Yes.
Okay, well then all you would be left with, under your view of not having to appeal, would be what? It would be that women have to take accountability.
So
That's it.
Andrew,
Yeah.
I, I'm not trying to do like a gotcha thing with you. I promise. I
It's
actually
not a
think
gotcha. It's not a
I
gotcha. I'm showing you your logic here and where it's flawed. The case of the matter is that if it's the case that men can, whenever they choose to, take rights away from women, and I contend that they can. I contend that collectively men can do this whenever they want to, and women can't really do anything about that, right? Collectively, they just can't.
yeah
Right? If
we
that's
saw
the case, yeah, if that's the case and women want to keep whatever it is that they have, whatever rights they have, what is the thing that they need to demonstrate? What is it?
so basic.
Accountability. Hang on. Accountability. They need to demonstrate accountability. Otherwise, what happens? Men come in and take their fucking rights.
So let me ask you a question. What percentage of the women who come on the whatever podcast that you debate with, and you know, I'll say that I love the way that you handle a lot of that, right? It's brilliant stuff. So I'm really not trying to like, you know, fuck with you in any real way. But what percentage of the women that come on that podcast do you think take accountability for themselves?
I don't know. Not very many.
Okay, and not very many. Try to ballpark it. Is it 10%, 20%?
I couldn't even give you a range. I mean, maybe less than that.
Yeah,
Maybe
less.
5%.
Agree.
Let's just say it's 0%. I'll just grant zero of them have ever once taken accountability. Go ahead from there.
Okay, so this
I'll
is
still show you. I'll still show you where you're going with this and why it's flawed. So let's just say 0% take accountability. Go ahead.
okay. Yeah, I appreciate your magnanimity. And just for the sake of
You're
argument,
welcome.
it's like
Hmm.
hundreds or thousands of women that you've interacted with on that podcast, correct?
Well, maybe not thousands on that podcast, but thousands between all the podcasts and Discord and Twitter debates. Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So you've interacted with thousands of women. You've had the ability to question them on their beliefs and their perspective on the world and so
Hmm.
on. And for the sake of
Hmm.
argument, you're willing to grant me that literally none of them have taken
Literally
accountability for
none.
themselves or their actions.
Yeah, not a single one. Let's say, for the sake of argument.
Okay, and so like this isn't even a Socratic question. What leads you to believe that they're capable of it if that's the case?
Because of the thousands of DMs I get from women all over the world who say that I open their eyes. Because the debates with the women or the interrogations of the worldviews has never been for the women on the podcast. It's
Right.
always been for the tens of thousands and many times millions who end up listening to them later.
Right. And look, I really, I
Take accountability when they're debating. They want to win the debate.
Yeah, so I agree, and I also think that you want to win the debate, right? Like we both have egos.
Yeah.
We both want to win our points and so on, right? And
Well, no,
fundamentally,
I don't even think that that's ego driven. I just think that if your job is to represent a worldview or you're trying to represent a worldview, you're trying to represent it the best way possible. You don't do that by losing arguments. That would be a really bad way to represent a worldview. Imagine representing a worldview and all you did was lose arguments based on that worldview. Would anybody ever follow it?
right? So you just made my point for me that I was just saying, right? The fact that you're winning arguments is what is converting people to your worldview, and the way that you win arguments is by demonstrating some level of authority, right? And okay, if you want to quibble with my use of the word submission, fine. But what you're doing is you're demonstrating two things when you win a debate. You're demonstrating competence and you're demonstrating authority, right? Power on some level, even if it's just the power to fucking get other people to understand your point of view.
Yeah, that's a very Nietzschean take. That was a criticism he had of Socrates, that philosophy was being used from the term for power. And in some ways, I guess there's some truth to that in an abstract way. But ultimately, the conversion of ideas is actually enabling other people to have power. And so, usually, people who are trying to convert power to themselves, they don't like to share it. So, like if you put ideas out in the ethos specifically for people to be able to use, refine, and make better, that really isn't like a show of power or nor a submission to power. It's just an idea that, yeah, there's sometimes people agree with what I have to say, but I don't think that that's a submission to authority, dude. I don't think that those are the same things at all.
So
I think you just conflate a lot of different, you're kind of conflating a lot of different ideas together.
so
And as we untangle them, they kind of make less and less sense.
I
But go ahead.
I would argue that you're getting into semantics, right? You're arguing about definitions as
Yeah.
opposed to the substantive
This whole thing
level.
is semantic. The whole thing is semantics right now. When you say things like submitting to authority, what is that except a semantic distinction? Now you're saying you're making a definitive claim about what authority is, what power is, and what submission is. You're making all three of those claims, and it's like, well, but I reject your kind of definitions of what these things are. I don't think that they coexist with the things you're
Okay,
describing.
let me put it in different words. And look, I really want us to. I feel like we have a really contentious sort of vibe right now, and I actually think that
Well, you probably shouldn't have led with I was trying to get immigrants to rape women. You probably shouldn't have led with that. That wasn't the best idea.
Okay, so let me apologize to you for that. But I apologize that I cast that aspersion upon you. And I would also like to say that I didn't lead with that. That was probably about 10 minutes into the conversation. But
Well, actually, you did because this was supposed to be about the tweet, right? And really, what your issue was with it was that you thought Andrew wanted immigrants to rape white women, which is fucking crazy. That's just the craziest shit, dude. Who would ever believe that?
so so the
How do you actually believe that? It's still mind-boggling to
so
me.
the point you're making. So would you agree that it's fundamentally women who voted for and continue to advocate for bringing in infinity third world people into the West? Like fundamentally, it's
Yes,
women's
that's
voting patterns that are doing that,
yes.
right?
Yes, I believe that if suffrage was not universal, and not just women, I think that it would have to be restricted
Agreed.
from some men as well. But if suffrage wasn't universal, no, we wouldn't have a mass migration issue at all. No way.
Yeah,
I don't believe it.
we absolutely wouldn't have a mass migration issue. And do you think that women have way more empathy? They're built for nurturing and so on, right? And so they look at these people, they're like, "Oh, they live in horrible circumstances compared to us. Like they should just be able to come here and we can all get along and have a good time." And that's just kind of what they're thinking, right? Like they don't think it all the way through, right? Agreed? When they're like voting, they don't think it all the way through about like what the real actual fucking consequences are going to be in terms of rape numbers quadrupling in a lot of Western countries since the year 2000.
No, I don't. I don't even agree with that. So here's been my experience with this from talking to kind of as many women from across the world as I talk to. And you still got a terrible echo, by the way. It's super annoying. But um, here's what I've noted. What I've noted is that they do actually try to think their vote through. Generally, as much as anybody does, as much as a man does, as much as they actually do. What they don't compensate for is unknown knowns. So you remember there was an old Rumsfeld thing where he was like, "There's known knowns, there's known unknowns, and there's unknown knowns," right? Men will also focus on the known unknowns, and women don't focus on. They mostly focus on known knowns. So this is what we know, and this is what we know will happen. This is what all the data shows when I research it out. This is what I see as far as trends in society. So they go for known knowns, and men will go for they'll be very cautious with casting a vote on an unknown known, meaning I don't know exactly what this is going to do, so I don't think I should do it. Like that seems like it's the distinction. They do think their position out, right? They just don't think out the known unknown portion where it's like, I'm not exactly sure what this is going to do, so I should exercise this with caution. And men have to do that as a matter of daily life because otherwise they die.
Right. I
Like if you're working on a machine, or you're you're building a dam, or you're doing things. There's times where it's like this is not the time for you to take risk, right? Because it could lead to your demise, even if you don't know exactly how it could.
Yeah, fair enough. So, is it fair to say, based on what you just said, that women aren't capable of thinking it through as deeply as men are, or am I mischaracterizing what you just said?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think they're not capable of it,
They
right? I just
they
think that,
generally
especially
don't.
in modernity, they generally don't. They generally don't think about the unknown knowns.
So, so is it fair to say that they don't think about it as deeply as men generally do?
I'm not. I'm not sure about deeply. That's where I'm having the hang up.
Okay, so
They think about it
all
differently.
right,
They
so
think about it way differently.
right. So let's say there's three different categories of things to consider when you're making a decision, right? You have your known knowns, you
Yeah.
have your known unknowns, and then you have your unknown unknowns, right? Um, and
Right.
so what you're saying is that in general, women only think about one of those categories, and then in general, men think about at least two of the three categories. Is that a fair characterization?
No. No. It'd be the other way around. So the idea would be that women would think about maybe two of those categories, maybe even slightly deeper than men would, but they kind of ignore the third category of the known unknown. You know what I mean?
Got it. Got it.
It just does, yeah, it doesn't move into their kind of sphere of of longevity thinking. And so that's where those consequences smack, because the truth is when you're thinking about what a thing will do, when you're thinking in the abstract, like when you're talking about an unknown consequence, you know that there's a consequence, but you don't know exactly what it'll be. You just kind of are focusing on the fact that there's a good possibility it could be bad, even if you don't know what that badness will be. That's where they seem to have more of a flailing. They seem to have more trouble with that.
Yep. I would agree. So let me just try this again. So we've broadly defined three different categories of things that you have to consider when you're making such a decision. And in general, you're saying that men generally consider all three and women only consider two of them, right?
Yeah, well, I would say that there's a lot more categories, but within the confines of these categories you're thinking of, yeah, I would say that they generally don't move towards those.
Okay.
They think
So,
differently.
so
Yes.
this is kind of why I was saying that you're saying that they think differently, and I'm just saying that the difference is that in general, because of the additional categories that men are able to consider, in general, men think more deeply about it than women do. Is that fair or no?
Oh, well, okay. Well, maybe they think more deeply on that than women do. But when you're saying deeply, I don't think that they think about their positions less than men do in these other categories. They just don't really think deeply about that category.
Right, right. So
You see what I'm saying?
yeah. So ignoring
So
ignoring
it's
an
like,
entire
okay, let's say
category
you
is a
have
lack
three.
of thought.
Let's try it this way. There's three textbooks, right? There's math, science, and history, right? And women will focus just as deeply as men on history and math. You know what I mean? But whatever that third textbook is, they don't really care that much about it. They don't really focus too much on it.
Right.
This is not the way their mind works, right?
Yeah, and so they lack a certain amount of perspective or depth of understanding because of that. Because they ignore that third text.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess sure. I'll grant it for the sake of this. Yeah, just to move it along. I don't want to get caught up, bogged down on this forever. But go ahead.
Well, so if you understand math and science, but you don't understand history, like that's a huge fucking blind spot. Agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So is it fair to say then, and I don't want to put words in your mouth or make you agree with something that you don't agree with. So is it fair to say that women have a blind spot when it comes to this?
Yes,
Okay,
that's fair.
perfect. Perfect. And so because of that blind spot, right, it makes it much more difficult to make a good, coherent decision. Agree?
Um, yes, for some issues it is absolutely.
Yeah. And so all I'm saying is that because women are not necessarily as able to make or as inclined to make a good coherent decision about certain things,
Hmm.
um
Yeah.
like they just like they can't understand the consequences of their actions on some level because of that blind spot. And it's a fucking huge blind spot.
That see, we were all good, and then he took it one step too far. I don't know why you guys always do this, but you see how those two thoughts don't actually connect, right? So you saying that they have a blind spot means they can't be held responsible for their actions. You have to
Not
really fucking connect those dots
okay.
for me here, bro.
Okay,
You got to connect
you're right.
those for
You're
me
right.
here.
You're right. Let me rephrase because that was imprecise. Let me see if I can take a better swing at it. So because of that blind spot, right? It's obvious to you and I that they lack a certain amount of perspective, right? Okay. So maybe they should be if you want to say should on some level, they should be held accountable for their actions. Fine, but
Yeah.
it's like asking a blind person to fucking judge high diving or something, right? Like when they invariably disagree with the other judges, it's like obviously because they're fucking blind. They didn't even see what happened.
Yeah, but if the blind person says that they can make the judgments, and then they go in and they clearly can't make the judgment, and you don't pay them because they can't make the judgment, aren't they feeling the consequences or the accountability of their actions? Like you're not going to say because he's blind, he's not accountable for coming in and making those judgments, even though he clearly couldn't.
So even if the blind person,
You would never say that ever.
even if the blind person thinks they can make those judgments, right? It's the fault of the person that put them in that position, right? Like it's not the blind person's fault for not understanding, for not knowing what they don't know. It's the person who allowed them to make those judgments that's actually at fault on some level.
They do. Hang on, but they do know, right? They do know. Like, what do you mean? You think a blind person doesn't have enough judgment to know that he can't see, or what, or she can't see? They do.
So
And so if they enter into one of these contracts and say, "I have just as much capability as you do of judging this. Here, I'll prove it," and then they can't, you hold them accountable for it,
So,
dude.
so Andrew, would you agree that earlier we were talking about men and women that you've talked to over the course of your career, right? And you basically said that
Uh-huh.
no women take accountability for themselves, and almost no men do. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. So, is that a fair summary of what you said?
No.
Okay.
What I said was that for the sake of argument, I'll put it at 0%, which I'll still stand by here, and that during an argument, almost no men take accountability. As many men take accountability as women during an argument.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, is it fair to say then that in general, humans
Yeah.
regardless of gender, have a tendency to be somewhat delusional.
Well, yeah. I mean, that by necessity they do. Yeah.
Yeah, by necessity, right? So the blind person might be delusional, but like people who are the definition of a delusion on some level is that you don't know you're in it when you're in it. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. So the blind person could have a delusion that they're able to judge like a high dive competition or whatever, right? But then if some committee or someone hires them to actually do that job, right,
Mhm.
and then they fail at it,
Yeah.
I would argue that the failure is not the fault of the delusional person because they're fucking delusional, right? The fault is the person who put them in that position. They set them up to fail, essentially.
Wouldn't you just say the fault was both?
I mean, all right, yes, but if you had to pick
Yes.
51%,
It's like what?
so if you
Uh,
had to pick who's more responsible though, right? Because shared responsibility means no one's responsible.
okay, so I mean, even if we took this analogy to its conclusion, then that would still mean women need to take accountability. Just men need to take slightly more accountability.
That actually might be a fair characterization of the way I see it. Yeah. I mean, someone, the buck has to stop with someone, right? Someone has to take responsibility for what happens. And my fundamental position is that men should be ultimately, even if it's 51 to 49, men should be the ones who take responsibility and accountability way more often than not. Are you there? Yes. And again, like Casey
Yes, they
Anthony is
get
at a
half the
table.
cent. Okay, so here's the world that you propose, dude. This is the world that you propose is that women have equal enfranchisement, and as long as
No,
it's the
that's no,
case,
no, no. That's not what I propose at
okay,
all.
no,
I don't think
okay,
they
but
should have equal enfranchisement. You're right.
hang on, descriptively, it's true though that they do.
Well, that was the point I was just making, and you were telling me that
Yeah,
that was nonsense. You were like, "Oh, you're evading."
no, no, you were evading answering the question of ought. So the descriptive claim here, though, is they have equal enfranchisement. The ought under this is even with equal enfranchisement, right? They should be punished at half the level of men for the exact same crime because they didn't know no better. Do you realize like how feminist this position is, dude? You realize how this is the most? This has got to be the most white knight apologetic woman apologetics I've ever heard in my life. You're basically giving women a pass on the horrible things that they do by simply saying that they don't have the capability of even making rational decisions for themselves. They just don't even have. They're just not capable of it.
So you literally your entire job, dude, is to point out how women don't have the capacity to make rational decisions. You realize that? Like that's
No,
literally what you're
when,
known for.
when, no, it's not what I'm known for. Force doctrine has nothing to do with whether or not women can make rational decisions.
You're
Nothing. Zero.
bro,
Has zero to do with it.
look at your podcast, bro. You bring on whores, OnlyFans whores, right, with their tits out and shit, and then
Uh huh.
you debate them about their decisions and make them look
Yeah.
foolish.
Do you like
That's
to? I mean, how many more lies are you going to tell? The grand total of all of the OnlyFans women who have ever been on whatever is 15%. Almost every woman who goes on there is way more educated than I am. Most of them have degrees. Many of them have multiple degrees, and tons of them are the same fucking age I am. So tell another
so
lie. Tell
so
another
hang on,
fucking lie.
do you think that degrees mean that someone knows what the fuck they're talking about? Because I know tons of people who have degrees who don't have any idea.
Well, I think that this idea that they're just all dumb bimbos and OnlyFans whores, when none of the data bears that out, and it's a complete and total lie, and it only comes out of the mouth of people who don't watch the show, makes me think that you don't even watch it, so you just don't even have a clue what you're talking about.
Okay, look, I have watched a lot of clips from the show. A lot.
Yeah, a lot of bait clips, bro.
No,
Yeah.
from the whatever I follow the whatever
Uh-huh.
podcast clips channel on YouTube, and I watch tons of
Uh-huh.
clips directly from that. And there are a lot of fucking whores on that show who don't know what they're talking about. Like whether or
There's a
not
lot
they
of people.
believe it,
There's a lot of
fucking
people
irrelevant. Right.
everywhere who don't know what they're talking about. But interestingly enough, I haven't found the prostitutes to be any worse at arguing than a lot of the men I argue with. Like the ones, for instance, you might think that these prostitutes say insane shit, but I haven't really heard any of them say that women should get lesser sentences for crimes in comparison to men, and definitely not half the sentence because they shouldn't have any accountability. Boy, that's
That,
I
but
don't even think
that
a
literally
prostitute would make
that,
that argument.
that that literally is what happens though. Like Casey Anthony drowned her
No,
fucking
it's
children and
literally
she's
not what
walking around now.
happens. Yeah, and there's
That
tons
is
of
what
women
happened.
who've killed their kids who got life in prison. What's your point? It's not even a descriptive truth. What you're saying is not even descriptively true. It's not even descriptively true. Under the law, they're supposed to get equal punishment.
Okay,
So it's
so
not like it's not even descriptively the case what you're saying. You're
they
pointing out an
they don't
outlier, and
they
you know
don't
what? OJ got off too. OJ got off
if you
too,
look at
bro.
the data, there's tons of data on this, bro. If you look at the data, women get lesser sentences for basically anything violent than they do compared to men. Like this is very well
No,
documented. I
no, no,
don't know
no,
how you
not
did
for
it.
all. No, because it's not true. What you're citing now, violent statistics studies. They're talking about how courts hand out lesser sentences for many of the same types of crimes that men commit. That's true, but it's not all types of crimes.
All
You
right,
understand
again,
that?
the vast majority, and do you understand that
It's not the vast. It's
generalization?
not the vast
Do
majority. It's
you
not the vast
understand that
majority.
generalizations are a heuristic and they're true more often than not? And that yes, there are exceptions to every generalization, but the exceptions serve to prove the rule, not to fucking.
Sure,
Uh,
sure. There's nothing wrong with utilizing a heuristic or a mental shortcut, which is what a heuristic is a mental shortcut. There's nothing wrong. I wouldn't even care if you were monolithically using a heuristic because I would know what you were talking about. But in this case, you got to be specific when you're talking, when you're saying in society, descriptively, women get lesser punishments for the same crime as men. No, in some cases, that's the case. In some types of crimes, that's the case. So that's not a heuristic. That's just a falsehood, right?
so
It's
I
not a
would say that
heuristic.
in most types of crimes, that's the case. Again, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was essentially one of the most prolific pedophiles ever in human history that we know of, just got moved to a fucking country club, right? A country
Well,
club.
she
And
wasn't. Was
the
she?
man who was also involved with her got fucking murdered 6 years ago now.
Was Ghislaine Maxwell actually convicted herself of sexually assaulting anybody underage, or she was the organizer, right?
Well, okay, so the what she got convicted of in court is not actually what she did. Not all of it, right? Like she got convicted of sex trafficking, but then we don't know who these children were trafficked to. And so it's really weird that you have
Yeah,
a
I
sex
don't. I
trafficking
don't.
conviction
Yeah, I don't
without any
disagree.
crime,
Look, I don't
right?
disagree with any of this. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I'm just pointing out to you that I can give you case after case after case of women getting the fucking book thrown at them. I can give you a case of a woman who this went viral everywhere. She hired a fucking hitman to kill her husband. They put her in for the max sentence. Like, no, dude, I don't. What you're talking about right now is the same shit that you hear from black people who say, well, it's due to these contributing factors of racism. It's why we get punished more than whites. You know what I mean? It's the same style of argument there. There's a lot more there than meets the eye. Like I can give you this other example. There's a study, for instance, that if you have black sounding names, you're less likely to get hired, right? And that's statistically true. You're less likely to get hired. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't take white trash sounding names like Bubba, Bubba, Cletus, shit like that, and compare the data there to see if they were less likely to get hired too, based on the white trashy sounding names.
Yeah,
So
or
it's like
Billy Joe or whatever the fuck.
yeah, exactly. So there's bias in these all the fucking time. And
Well,
yeah, when you're gonna pull stats, yeah, I want you to be specific with stats. I do. Yes.
well, I mean, in general, right? Like stats are useful on some level, but as Mark Twain once quipped, like you have lies, damn lies, and statistics. Like at the end of the day, it's just monkeys with a clipboard who are
Well,
gathering.
then why are you saying it's a descriptive truth?
Well, I mean, we have to
Yeah,
start showing.
that didn't make much sense, did it? You got caught there pretty bad, didn't you? Yeah. Why would it be a descriptive truth if you don't believe in the fucking stats to begin with? It's
So I
like
mean, this
you kind of
lots.
refute yourself. You kind of refute yourself every few minutes here, dude. But we're also steering away from this great point that you made, which is this, which is, hey, Andrew, I think that women have half the accountability of men and should get half of the sentence for horrible things they do than men should get.
So again, I would say that if we want to go to aughts, right? What what
Yeah.
ought to be the case is that women in general ought to be under the leadership of a man in their family that loves and cares about them on some level, right? Whether
Okay.
that be
They're
the
under the
father or
leadership
the brother
of a
or the
man.
husband or whatever.
Okay, so okay, great. They're under the leadership of their father who loves them. They're 20, 21 years old and they haven't married yet and they fucking kill someone. Does dad go to jail?
No, but dad, like
Then
the
who
women,
goes
you should. So
then who goes to jail?
this is why I brought up your podcast, right? In general, is it fair to say that like
No,
women
no, don't answer a question with a question. Answer the questions first, and then you can go down your dialogue tree, and I'll answer yours like I did before. Now it's my turn. Now I
okay,
want to know who goes to jail.
the
Who
woman
goes to
goes to jail.
jail? Okay,
The woman
but
goes
she
to
only
jail,
goes to jail
obviously.
for half the time that a man would go to jail.
In general, they get much more leniency. Yes, they
No,
do.
should ought. We're in ought territory here. Remember ought. What ought
Should
happen?
should they get more leniency? No, they should not.
Why? Okay, well then you're giving them equal accountability, even when they're under strong leadership of men, dude. That's your whole argument's destroyed. If they
Well, no,
shouldn't get if they shouldn't get
because
a lesser sentence than men, then you're holding them to the same account, even under the strong leadership of men, dude.
so here's the thing, though. I think it's way less likely that a woman's going to commit murder if she is under the strong leadership of a man
So
who
what?
does care
Yeah,
about
so
her.
what? That
If
has
she's
nothing to do with
not,
accountability. So what?
that's when she's going to do crazy, stupid shit.
Yeah, so what? So what? All you're doing is saying it'll decrease the likelihood of criminology or their ability to do crime. So what? We're not disputing that. Nobody's disputing that if you have strong men in the household, that the chances that women do fucking bad shit goes down. Who's disputing that? That has nothing to do at all with fucking accountability, though.
It actually
How
kind
is
of
it?
does on
How
some
is
level.
it the
It
case?
does. It
How is
does
it the
because
case?
if they don't have that, right? They don't really don't have the ability to have accountability.
Yeah,
It's
but
the
when
fact
you
that they
say
have a
that,
strong man in their life that
okay,
gives them guidance and direction. That's what
okay,
gives
wait a
them guidance
second.
and direction. That's why
Okay,
you're the
wait, wait.
fucking leader of your household, bro.
Wait a second. So if you're giving guidance and direction, then the woman could be held accountable. But if there's not a man around guiding her, then she can't be.
No, that's not what I said. It's that she's way more likely not to do dumb shit if she has, like, you
What
agreed
does
with
that
my
have to
point.
do with What does this have to do with accountability? What?
So,
What does it
so
have to do with the fact that she kills
the
somebody?
notion of
She gets a
accountability
half
doesn't
sentence.
even the notion of accountability doesn't even really come up if she has that in her life. If she has that
Yes, it
leadership in her
does.
life,
Yes, it does. She
it
got drunk
doesn't
one night
really.
with the girls and killed somebody. Okay? Is she accountable for that shit at the same level as a man or not?
Look, is it true? Is it true
No,
that
no,
if a woman,
not look, Andrew. Here's a question to your question. Answer the fucking question, dude. You're the most
bro,
evasive
you're doing
worm. You're
you're
the
doing
most.
sophistry. You're doing
What's the
sophistry.
sophistry? What's this? How is this sophistry? This is a legitimate line of philosophical inquiry based on your position. How could that possibly be sophistry?
Okay, so
How?
I'm trying to answer your question, and you're trying to fucking like, you
No, you
know,
didn't. You didn't answer. You asked me a question. Is asking a question the same as answering a question, or is it
it
different?
it can be the same, yes.
No, it
If the
can't.
question,
No, it can't be. Listen,
if I require clarification,
it can never be the case that
I
you asking
require
me a question is
clarification in
answering a
order to
question.
answer your question. It, so if I require
Oh my God.
clarification, I'm trying to make it so that I can answer the question
Well,
more.
then you weren't asking for clarification. You were asking another question. What are you confused about? Woman gets drunk, hits guy with car. Should she get the same sentence a man in that situation gets or not?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well
In the current context, yes.
then you are saying that they have equal accountability to men, and that's that.
Yeah, but it's
There's no
more
but.
complicated than that. There
No, it's
is a
not more
but, right? And the
complicated than
but is
that.
force doctrine. The but is fucking force doctrine,
Oh, I
fundamentally.
can't wait to
Right?
hear this. Okay, let's hear the fundamental but, which is force doctrine. Go ahead.
Again, their rights flow from men, right? And
Uh
so,
huh.
in general, it's my opinion that if a woman is acting out of pocket,
Uh
fundamentally,
huh.
it's because she lacks that masculine leadership that we were talking about. In general,
So it's
that
so it's
that is
men's
the case.
fault. So it's the man's fault.
On some level, yes. And
So
otherwise,
so
force
then why
doctrine is
doesn't
bullshit. Otherwise,
so then
force
why
doctrine is
doesn't
bullshit. Otherwise,
yeah
it's just
yeah,
made up
that's
nonsense.
yeah, okay. How could it be made up nonsense when it has nothing to do with accountability, but is a descriptor for power dynamics? You keep
How
on
could you
trying.
separate?
You
How the
guys
fuck
like you
could you
guys do
separate
this.
power
Yeah.
dynamics from accountability, bro? You cannot separate power from accountability. It's not
Why
possible.
not? Yes, it is. What do you mean? They mean totally different things. Power and power does not mean the same thing as accountability. They don't mean anything like they're nothing alike. They're not
If
even. I don't even think they're synonyms. What do you
if
mean?
if you were destitute, right? If you,
Uh huh.
let's say
Yeah.
you had nothing and you needed to feed your family, right? Would you be
Okay.
willing to
Yeah.
steal in order to feed your family?
Sure.
Of course, right? Fucking of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and would you be accountable for that necessarily? Like, no, because you don't have
Yes.
the power. It's the
Yes.
only fucking way.
Yes.
It's the only way. Like, so you would be accountable if someone enforces accountability. But if someone tries to enforce
Uh huh.
accountability and you don't let them, then you're not accountable, right?
So all you're saying is that accountability and force are different.
No,
Perfect.
no, no, no,
Wow.
no,
That's
no.
it.
That's the opposite of what I'm
No.
saying, bro. That's the
Oh,
opposite.
you're saying they're the same.
So I can only for I cannot force you to be accountable unless I have power over you, right? If you don't want to be
Yeah,
accountable,
but
if you
force
don't
isn't
want to be
required.
accountable, I can't make you
But force.
unless
Yeah, but for
unless I use violence.
yeah. So wait a second. So you can be accountable without force. Yeah.
A person can choose to be accountable, but in general,
Oh,
uh,
okay. Wait a second. So then force isn't required for accountability. Thank you.
sometimes,
Glad
sure,
we
but again, this is an
glad
exception.
we got.
Hang
I'm
on, hang
glad
on.
we got that cleared up.
So this is the sophistry. You're doing this black and white thing where you're like, oh, force isn't required. I said earlier, I'm making a generalization. Of course, there are exceptions to every generalization. The
That's not an
generalization
exception.
serves to
Listen,
prove the
listen.
fucking rule.
Yeah, no, that's not an exception. Okay, so an exception is like this. An exception is like, do human beings have belly buttons? And someone's like, well, no, it can't be that human beings have belly buttons because some human beings don't have belly buttons. Then you can say, but it's the exception of the ones that don't versus all the ones that do that kind of prove the rule that human beings have belly buttons. That's an exception to a rule. You saying force and accountability are the same thing? That's not an exception to a rule. You don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about two completely different things. Accountability doesn't mean the same thing as force. Force doctrine is a descriptor about how rights are
I'm,
granted and
I'm
how
not
rights
saying
are
they mean
appealed
the same
for
thing. I'm saying that
and hang on
the
who's the
related
enforcement
concept.
arm and who's the enforcement arm for rights. What force doctrine is not about is accountability, which moves into moral odds. It has nothing to do with that. That moves beyond descriptors, and that moves
So
into odds.
the point I'm making is that force and accountability are very much related, right? Very often, in order for society to hold someone accountable for their actions, they send armed men to their place to abduct them, right? And then they bring them to a prison, a holding facility, and they're forced to go through an entire legal procedure in order to adjudicate whether or not they should be held responsible. So all of that is at the basis of force, right? So what I'm not saying that force and accountability are the same. I'm saying that they're very much related concepts, right? Because sometimes people choose to take accountability, but very often, especially when they do horrendous things, they choose not to take accountability. At which point, if accountability is going to happen, it has to be as the result of force.
Well, all you're talking about now is a relationship between how two different concepts can intersect with each other. So all you're saying here is, well, there's a relationship between force and accountability if people use force for accountability, which is trivially true, but you can say that about anything in regards to force. Doesn't matter what it is. As long as force is being used for X, then force and whatever X is are going to be relational in that case because you're using force for X. But accountability itself doesn't actually have anything to do with force. To be held to account, maybe you can make the argument that has something to do with force, but accountability itself, not so much. Accountability itself could be something like a confessional at a church. Accountability can be something like saying you're sorry to a friend. Accountability
So,
can be things like
but all right.
returning products on time. Accountability can be things like I borrow your lawnmower and give it back to you in better condition than I got it in. All of those things are forms of accountability. And so, no, I don't think that they're related. I think you're just making a relation between anything you use force and then X, force against X is relational to force, but that's always trivially true. But how this relates to force doctrine being false if women have accountability.
Andrew, are there consequences for you if you refuse to confess your sins as a Christian? And if so, what are they?
Sure. There's all sorts of consequences, demonisis, problems in life, problems with living, all sorts of things. However, those consequences are not necessarily abated because you do confess.
Agreed, agreed. But the consequences of refusing to confess are like much more certain than if you do in your worldview. Is that fair?
Well, no, it's actually not fair. I mean, we're not, in fact, in some ways, it's the opposite. So in Orthodox Christianity, we say if you're an Orthodox Christian, you're probably actually going to be under attack more often. So there's probably worse consequences for being a Christian than not being a Christian ultimately. There is like an ultimate reward system here, I think, overall, living a good, clean life or things like that, sure. But I still think that the conflation here doesn't make a lot of sense because if I borrow your lawnmower and I give it back to you the next day and it looks better than when I got it from you, right? How's force relational there?
It's not necessarily directly relational, but I would
Yeah, it's not
imagine
relational.
I would imagine, however, that if you did give my lawnmower back to me in better condition than I gave it to you, right? There's some reason that you did that, right? Now, whether it's because you want me to like you more, whether it's because you're just a good guy, whether it's because you have this like personality quirk where you always have to improve everything that you interact with
Is
or
that
whatever.
is that what you think? Do you think that human relations like this are transactional? Because I don't
Not
think they
all.
are. I don't think they're transactional, and you're making it sound very transactional. I think that when you're talking about accountability, right, you're talking about responsibility. Now, those things are relational. And so I think that when you're talking about duties, responsibility, accountability, all of these things which are relational, probably synonyms, if you look it up, they're probably very close, um, that those things don't require force. And so when we're asking women to be
Well,
held accountable, we're not just talking about socially held accountable. We're asking for them to hold themselves accountable too. That's the main thing, right? We're asking them to hold themselves accountable. And why? Why are you asking them to hold themselves accountable? Well, the idea here is that you don't want to use force to strip rights. You don't want to use force to take things away. You don't want to use force to do that,
so
right?
I I would argue um, I would argue fundamentally, and Yeah, I see your point, and I would argue that it's actually this idea, this notion, which is what has
Uh-huh.
caused the decline of the West in a lot of ways. Like the West has taken on a sort of suicidal empathy against, for groups of people and populations that hate us and want to destroy our civilization. And
Well, yeah,
um,
it's because you won't hold women to account. You think that women don't have the same cognitive abilities as men. You think of
they
them like
don't.
children, and
They
so
are
because you
children.
think of them, yeah, exactly, and so because you think of them like children, they're never held to account for anything, and then you
So
wonder why it is that they fuck shit up, and then laugh. Well, it's because you can't do anything about it because you won't hold them accountable for any of it.
Well, no, I'm saying that we should fucking hold them accountable, but we're not. We are objectively not. And that
Ah, we
is
should
fundamentally the
hold
problem.
them. Wait, we should hold them accountable. Interesting. Why should we hold them accountable? Ooh, yeah,
Because
that's
of
a that's a
force
brutal one,
because
bro. This is
no,
gonna be
no, it's not.
brutal. Go ahead.
It's because of
Uh-huh.
force doctrine. It's fundamentally
Oh, it's
because of
because
force
of force
doctrine. It is
doctrine.
our responsibility.
Oh,
It is our responsibility to make sure that they're acting right. As
I
men, it is
see.
our responsibility. If we don't do it, it
I
will not get done.
see. Wait a second. We need to hold women accountable using force doctrine, but they're like children. I thought we couldn't hold them accountable.
Well, you cannot uh you can't make a child necessarily be accountable, but you can give them consequence. For example, right? You have a 4-year-old child who's in public, they're acting out of pocket, right? What's
Uh-huh.
the correct thing to do? You remove them from the situation and you say, hey,
Mhm.
whenever you're ready to act right, and here's what right action looks like, you're welcome to come back. You're absolutely welcome to come back. But as long as you're not acting correctly, you have to stay here. Yeah, you're not allowed to.
Wait, so you're demanding accountability out of children too? What sort of monster are you?
I'm a horrible monster, Andrew.
Yeah, so you're
The worst
demanding
kind.
that children are also accountable for the things that they do.
But
In fact,
however, what I'm
in
saying
fact you hold them to a
is that
standard of choice. You're giving children choices. You can do this, and then you can do that. That seems to imply some sort of agency. That's really strange. So it's almost like they have agency and accountability, and you're holding them to account for the things that they do, just
yes,
like you would a
I
man. That's really
I
super weird.
I am holding them to account because they are not capable. A 4-year-old child is not capable of holding themselves to account.
Then
They
why are you
require
holding them
my
to
leadership
account? If you
in order to do that.
Why? Hang on. Why would you
They need to
hold
be
somebody
taught.
to account? Why would you hold somebody to account who's not accountable?
And like, I mean, you're doing this stupid thing. Of course you agree that children should be held accountable, right? Like,
Well, okay. Why are you holding people to account who you don't think are accountable?
because they have to be taught, right? It's a
Okay,
skill.
but why? How can
It's
you
a
teach
skill
people who have who? Okay, listen. So you're saying
by
that you can
force.
teach them
The
to be
only way to teach
accountable?
people
So you're
accountability
saying
is
you
by
can teach?
fucking force, bro.
So you're
By
saying that
force.
people can be taught? You're saying people can be taught to be accountable?
Some people can be taught to be accountable, sure, with
Like
force,
children
right?
and women? So we can use force to teach women accountability.
Yes, like we
So
do.
then was so then women so then women can be held to account. They are accountable
If they are forced to be in general, in the same way that a child is forced to be, has to be forced to
in
be
the same
accountable.
way
A
that
child,
in the
a
same way
child
that men
who's
are
having
forced to be
a
accountable.
child who's having a meltdown in a restaurant, right?
Uh huh.
Um,
Yeah.
the, you can't just tell them calm down. Right? That's not going to help them. If you tell them calm down and they don't, then you have to forcibly remove them from the situation, take them somewhere else, and
Uh
then maybe
huh.
you might be able to say, "Hey, if you calm down, you can come back. Otherwise, you got to stay here."
Yeah. Right. So it sounds to me like you're holding the child accountable for his actions.
I'm holding them to.
Like the child should know better than to
I'm
do
forced.
that. And
I'm
since the
forcing
child
them.
doesn't know better, yeah,
I'm
but why are you
forcing them
giving
to
them a
learn a lesson.
consequence? Yeah, but why are you giving them a consequence for a thing they're not accountable for. That makes no sense.
Are children responsible for their actions, Andrew? Do you believe that children are responsible for their actions, like a 4-year-old child?
A 4-year-old, they're responsible for some of their actions. Yes.
I would agree, right? So there's nuance here, right? And you're trying to do this black and white thing, right? You're saying, oh,
Well, there's
if you're
not
going to hold
nuance
them
with adult.
accountable, then
Yeah,
they have
there's
accountability.
not
And
a,
it's like, well, they have some
yeah,
level of accountability, and you have to, if you're a good leader, you have to
yeah,
understand what
yeah.
level of
So,
accountability they're able
uh-huh,
to fucking have, and then force them
uh-huh,
to, to
uh-huh.
conform.
But we can agree then that women at least need to be held accountable, right?
I think that women have a limited level of accountability in a similar way that I just described with children, right? That there are some
Uh-huh.
ways in which they can be held accountable, but it does require some level of force, hopefully from a man who cares about them and that they respect. And respect is a thing that must be earned. It must be earned, right? Like you can't. I have a wolf
So you
dog,
got to
right?
beat. So you got to beat them up.
No, you don't. Actually, beating them up is one of the least uh effective means of force, right?
Oh, so what means of force should you use when a woman is making a scene in a diner? What should
Uh,
you do?
well, you can fucking you can say to her, "Hey, this is unacceptable behavior. If you keep it up, I'm gone." Right?
Oh, gee, that man, you're really holding her to account, man. Oof, you're really teaching her a lesson, bro. That's some strong male leadership you're showing there. You're gonna, yeah, either you stop crying or I'm leaving.
it depends on the
Tell
situation,
me,
right?
tell
Like,
me, tell me all about how that's forceful. By the way, I thought you hold them to account by force. They're crying and making a scene in a restaurant. How? Just like a kid would, just like a child would, who you would spank and say not to do that anymore. Teach them a lesson. What are you going to do
I,
to her, bro? What are you gonna do to her to make her stop crying in the restaurant? What?
you're you're not acting and you're not arguing in good faith here, but that's fine.
No,
It,
this is good faith. What's wrong with
it's
this question? What are you going to do when a woman's making a scene in a restaurant and you don't want her to make a scene? What are you going to do about it?
the first thing is to say, "Hey, you're making a scene. Like, stop that." And then if she refuses, you just remove your attention. Like, you can't obviously for fucking
Oh, you're going
obvious
to remove your
reasons
attention.
you can't beat them up and shit. But like, you can.
Where
Why?
does the
Why?
force
Okay.
come
Why
in
is she
here?
causing it, bro? Why is she causing it?
Where?
She's
Who
causing a
cares?
scene because
Where's
she
the
wants
force
fucking
come in?
attention.
Where's the force come in? Where's that part?
So she wants your attention, and you're refusing to
Uh
give it
huh.
give it to her, right? That's it.
That's
That's it.
force. That's force. That's force.
It's coercion on
What?
some level. You
What?
know,
So women can only be corrected by force. Oh yeah? Well, what are you gonna do when this woman acts out? Not use force. You fuck. Okay, so when does force talk? When do we get to the force part, bro? When do we get to the force part?
well, if again, if you look at the current situation, right? We have
Yeah.
we have a situation where the government basically steals resources from men and gives it to women, single moms, fucking all kinds of things, right? Fair enough.
Uh-huh.
So we currently have a situation in which the state is enforcing uh, taking resources from men and giving it to women. And so, like, of course, they're acting crazy and shit. And that actually, there is force against men uh, towards women in order to provide them like resources and so on, educational opportunities, jobs, right? Like, how many over the last
What,
40,
bro?
50 years?
Hang on. Okay. Well, let's just grant it. So let's say the state neutralizes this overnight. They no longer take any of men's resources and redistribute them to women. And you're out with your wife, okay? And she's crying and she's throwing a fit and she's pouting and she's being obnoxious and she's causing a big fucking scene. What are you gonna do about it?
So, hey, so so here's the thing, right? The reason why she's causing a scene and shit is because there's actually a financial incentive a lot of the time for women to fucking
I just told you
hold
the
men
financial,
hostage on some
the,
level.
yeah, the financial incentive is gone. I just told you the state no longer redistributes any male resources to women. They no
Well,
longer do that.
now there's real fucking consequences because now she's like somewhat dependent upon my resources, right? And
Why?
so
Well, no, no, she's not. Why was she? Why is she now dependent on your resources?
in the context of like let's say a traditional relationship, right?
Uh huh.
She
Yeah.
would be much more dependent upon my resources than if the state will enforce at the point of a gun her getting more than half of what I own, plus my children, plus thousands of dollars every month in perpetuity for fucking years on end, right?
I see. So
Um,
what you're saying? So what you're saying here is that men shouldn't get married, right? And they should not intertwine their resources with women. Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. What I will say is that in the current context, it's a huge fucking gamble. And like, you better be sure that you're making a good choice.
Totally agree. It's a huge gamble. You shouldn't intertwine the resources, blah, 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 blah. So now you got it. You're not intertwining the resources with her. She has a nice office job or some shit like that. She starts misbehaving. Where does the force come in here?
Well, I mean, so yeah, in this particular case, there isn't necessarily a force option.
Yeah. So how
It
are you
does
going to correct the behavior? So why does the correction and accountability require force again?
in the same way again. Force
See how
isn't
you
necessarily.
see you remember
Hang on,
earlier, by the
hang on,
way,
hang
when
on,
I
hang on,
said,
hang on. You're
yeah,
conflating.
go
So
ahead.
now you're conflating two things. You're conflating force and violence, right? Would you agree that force is not necessarily the same thing as violence, although it can
Yep.
include violence?
Totally agree. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm talking about the non-violent forms of force, right?
Okay. Well,
Coercion
what non
and so on.
coercion's not force. Coercion's not force.
Of course it is.
No, it's not.
It's a kind of force, sure.
No, it's not a kind of force.
How do you define force then? Because I think maybe and I'm happy to accept your definition, right? But I just since we're getting caught up on this, I'd like you to define it for me, and then we can work off of that definition.
Oh, okay. Even though you're the one who said that it is, I'm supposed to give you a definition for your
You're,
position, but
so
that's
so
fine. I'll do
you're
it for you.
quibbling. You're quibbling and fucking
Well,
being
no, you're
being
just
bad faith
well,
with your
you're
interpretation of
equivocating. No, you're just equivocating. And but the thing is like I'll give you a definition to placate you, and you can work off of that definition.
You
So
know what? Fuck you. I don't need to be placated, bro. Like really, you know, I've been trying to be to argue in good faith with you, and you're just like you're not doing it.
you
You're
see,
being a
remember how
fucking
I told you?
and
Do you
it's
remember
gay.
how I told you
It's
before
fucking
that
gay.
most of the time the men that I argue with refuse to take accountability? You're seeing that
Bro,
in
you
real
know what
time with
projection
yourself.
is? You know what projection is, my friend? You're
Well, you're
projecting.
the one who got well, you got blown out. That's your fault, not mine. But hang on, I'll give you the idea here of force. I'll give you a definition. Everything's always bad faith when you're losing. So force would be strength or energy is an attribute of physical action or movement.
Or movement,
Uh
right?
huh.
Physical action or movement, right? So that doesn't say anything about violence. And like you were laughing at me because I wasn't going to be violent to a woman in a restaurant, right? That's fucking bad
No,
faith.
no, no. I just told you that that's not force. You getting up and leaving is not force. That's not force. Nobody. By the way, do you honestly believe if you say that's bad faith? Do you honestly believe we could do a poll right now? If you put a poll out on your Twitter, I'll retweet it just to give it an enhancement and just ask this question. If a woman's crying in a restaurant and you leave, did you use force? What do you think people will say? Yes or no? What do you think they'll say?
Like again, this is an appeal to authority, right? You're doing an appeal to authority or an appeal to
Well, no,
control. This is
it
a
would be
logical
ad hoc.
fallacy.
It would be. It would be ad populum, but answer the question. What do you
No,
think they would
because
say?
it's a logical fallacy. Why am I going to
Yeah,
engage
what?
with
Well, it's
fallacious
not.
reasoning, right?
Well, in this case, I'm just saying that you would need to cite ad populum because that would at least make sense. But it's not an ad populum fallacy. We're quibbling about a definition, right? And you're saying your definition is not proprietary, but you disagree with mine, and I say, okay, well, if it
I,
was the
I,
case
I
that we
didn't
put this
disagree with your
definition,
definition. I told you, I literally said that I would accept it. And you said
okay,
that
well,
force
then
has
I'll
to
just
do
ask
with
you.
action.
So I'll just ask
Force has
you.
to do with
So
action or
yeah,
movement.
so
Action
I'll just
or
ask
movement.
you.
And
So
so
it's not
leaving
ad
the restaurant,
populum.
movement, you fucking
Oh,
retard.
so leaving the restaurant you think is force?
No, no, no. What was your definition of force? Go ahead, read it again. Read it again.
Yeah, it'd be energy and movement.
Energy and movement. Right, exactly.
Well,
So
hang on.
movement,
Energy and
I'm
movement
using my
and
energy
hang
to
on.
fucking leave the restaurant. Right?
Yeah, so
Movement.
strength or hang on, strength or energy
Movement.
is an attribute of physical action or movement. Okay, well, great. Then when you take your wife out on a nice date, you're forcing her then because you're moving.
I'm yeah, I'm forcing her to have good feelings on some level. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, you're
I,
forcing her.
I, I'm forcing her to have good feelings and to have a good time. If I plan a
Yeah,
date,
it's
right?
forced.
If I
Well,
plan a
then hang
date
on. But
and I
your
take her
wife's
out,
also
right?
hang on,
And
bro.
I
Your
treat
wife
her
is
well,
also
I'm
moving.
forcing her to
Your
have a
wife.
good time.
No, your wife's also moving, so she's forcing you too. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Why are
No,
you gonna let your wife force you? Why are you gonna let your wife force you to do things like that, man? That's
because everything is a dance, right? Like you're doing
uh
this whole like black and white thing and trying to be like, you know, lacking nuance. Like you're trying to get me into a corner that lacks nuance. And
you're in
I'm
the
not trying to do
corner.
that to you.
You're in the
I'm
corner,
I'm
bro.
definitely not trying to do that
Bro,
to you.
you just said that if you got up and left a restaurant when your girl was misbehaving in the middle of the restaurant, that's using force.
According to your
And
definition, it is.
you
According
think
to the definition that you gave me, it is.
before I gave you a definition, you said that, dude.
Right. And then you gave me a definition and it turned out to fucking
Uh,
completely
no,
validate my point.
when we're talking about movement here, we're talking about you moving a thing, not you moving your arm. That wouldn't be force.
Bro, movement is movement. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
like what
I'm
again
pushing a
you're
boulder. I'm
now
pushing a
now
boulder and the
now you're the
boulder's
one who's
moving.
doing a
That's force.
proprietary definition, dude. Now you're doing a
Look up.
proprietary
Okay.
definition. And
So
if you want to, that's
here's
fine. But that's
okay,
not the
fine, man.
definition you gave me.
Uh-huh. Okay. So just to make sure I got this right, you think that moving your body is force?
I'm forcing my body to move, quite literally. Yes.
Then
Yeah. I'm
everything is
smoking a
force.
cigarette and right now I'm forcing my arm
Mhm.
to come up to my mouth so I can take a drag of it. Yeah.
Okay, so then everything is force.
There's a way to look at the world in which that is true. There's a way to look at the
Okay,
world in which that makes right.
then women are forcing their children to do things, and they're forcing you to do things too.
I mean, my mother did force me to do things that I didn't want to do. I'm sure yours did too.
Yeah, I know, but
Like, how
if
fucking
you're on a
obvious.
date, yeah, but if you're on a date, she's forcing you because she's moving.
No, I mean there is a way in which there's a dance, right?
Oh,
Like
there's a
there's
dance. Yeah, there's a dance. I know. Yeah, you dance. Sometimes you got to dance, bro. The
uh
safety dance. Do 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 do
what
do do
what
do
I
do.
mean by that what I mean by that is that one
Uh-huh.
person moves and then the other person responds and then the
Uh,
initial mover responds to the response and so on. Like this, like fucking
mhm.
obvious.
Yeah. Okay. It's a dance. I get it. So the woman's going to cry in the middle of the restaurant. You're going to get up and leave. That's your show of force.
It well,
So
it
I got
really
it.
depends on
Hmm.
how like the level of relationship that I have with her, the reason why she's throwing a fit and so on. Like all of these things
Yeah.
matter, right?
Yeah. Do you think if I asked your best friend, if I said, "Hey, man, do you think that that you should use force on your wife?" that he would say yes or no?
He would say yes, probably, yeah.
He would say,
And
"Yeah, you
again, and
should."
again,
And do you
our
think? And
definition our
do you
definition
think?
of force is not violence, right? I'm not saying like I think that you're conflating force with violence. I'm not saying violence, but there are
Yeah,
other
but
kinds of force
do you know what
short of
context
violence.
keys are though? When you say we're going to use force to correct women, and then you say, and what that means is if they start causing a scene in public or causing trouble for you, you're going to get up and leave. Nobody in the world's ever going to buy that that's force, bro. No, nobody. It doesn't. It fits nobody's definition of what we would mean in that context. And you know this, but you're saying
It,
I'm the
it
one who's
is
bad faith, which is super
it is
bizarre, by the way.
it is enforcing a kind of accountability, right? The reason she's throwing a fit is because she wants attention. If I remove
Uh,
attention from her, that's a fucking consequence, and that's a kind. It's a kind of movement of energy, right? Which was your
uh-huh.
definition, right?
Kind of movement of energy.
Look, I asked you. You're laughing at your own definition. You realize how fucking stupid that is? It was your
Well,
definition.
I'm laughing at your interpretation of it, but I'll tell you what, I'll use your tactic. Give me a definition of force then that's better.
Give me a moment to think. I would say that
I'll let you think.
force is causing consequences for the behavior of other people.
What?
Some,
What?
something like that.
So if
Forcing
I
other
force open,
people to be
can I force open?
accountable for their behavior by
Can I
any
force
means.
open a door? Can I force open a door?
I mean, so if your wife locked you out of your office,
No,
right?
no, no. That's
You
not what I
break down
asked
the
you.
door.
I asked you if you
What did
could
you break
force
down the
open a
door?
door.
If your
That's
wife
not what
if
I'm
your wife
asking
locked
you.
you out of
That's
your office, would
dude.
you break down the door?
Shut up with your bad faith bullshit. Can you force open a door or not? Can you force open a door? Can
Of
you use
course,
force to open a door? Well,
of
then
course.
it can't be about holding people accountable. Then it has to be a broader definition than that, bro.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I, force force is yeah. The only thing that I can the causing movement, some movement in the world, causing
so
any
so
movement in the
so
world on
so
some
you
level.
agree? So you agree with my definition then?
Yeah, and you agree with my
Okay.
interpretation of it also.
Okay. So no. Well, no. That's where we
Yes.
disagree. So again, I'll just ask this again, just in good faith this time. Try to answer it right. If I put up a poll, right, anywhere in the fucking world, anywhere, and said, if you are in a restaurant and your wife's throwing a fit and you get up and leave, are you using force? Yes or no? What do you think the overwhelming majority of people would put there?
Um, you know, the over in 2020, the overwhelming majority of people voted for Joe Biden. Like, I don't fucking know. I don't know.
So you don't know. What's your intuition tell you there?
My intuition tells me that they're going to say no because they're stupid.
Oh, they're just dumb.
Do you
That's
think
why
that
they're saying no.
the majority of people, like, we talked about this before, right? The vast majority of men and women are not capable of taking accountability, or at least they don't in conversation with you, um, right?
Like you, like you. But yes,
Well, no,
but the idea,
you're
I'm
projecting that. And
projecting,
here's the thing.
I'm projecting.
I
It's
realize
projection. It's
I
projection.
I actually realize that we both have an ego. We're both trying to win here, and
No,
I
no,
actually
you just
hang on,
listen, bro,
hang on.
bro. Listen,
I've
I'm
been
just gonna
very
tell
trying.
you,
I've
you
been very
objectively
I've
lost by
tried.
every metric here, bro. There's not a single
You
metric here you won on, not one.
you're
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Right now, look. Here's the olive branch, though. There's a good olive branch here for you. I'm not even going to beat you up about it or hold it against you. I've done like literally thousands of debates. I should be really good at it. You know what I mean? I should be. But the thing is like you have a golden opportunity right this second to prove yourself as an exception to the rule and just say, hey, look, man, I was actually kind of wrong here. I was actually kind of wrong about a few of these suppositions that I made. I was wrong about some of the suppositions I made about you, and I was wrong about the descriptor of force doctrine. when I
So
really thought, when I hang on, when I really think it through, it is actually the case that force and accountability are separate. And I really didn't think through my position on accountability for women because when I'm pinned down on it, it turns out I don't really think the same things in practice that I thought before. And you know what? That's totally okay. And if you change your opinion, I won't beat you up about it. I'll just say, congratulations, you're one of the few that can.
So first of all, I apologize to you when you made it an issue, right? I apologize to you for my misinterpretation of what it was that I thought you said, right? And there've been a bunch of times where I've extended an olive branch to you and tried to be like, hey, like blah blah blah. Am I capable of admitting that I might be wrong about certain things? Of course, yes. I'm probably
No, no,
I
no,
think
no.
that
That you're wrong. That you were wrong about force doctrine, and you're wrong about women's accountability. You were wrong about it. And when you thought it through, you realized, wait a second, I can't really express that I want men to utilize force so women take accountability. There actually has to be some women taking accountability on their own because the way that I express force is to not use force.
so here's what I would say about that, right? It's more complicated than the way that you're characterizing it, right? So the more nuanced point that I was trying to make earlier, right, was about this notion that when women are in a situation where they have leadership from decent men who care about them, who they respect, they in general behave much better than, for example, women who were raised without fathers, who were abused and so on, right? And so what I'm really saying is that men have a certain amount of accountability. It starts with fathers, right? Women absolutely need to have strong fathers in their life.
But who's
Uh,
debating any of that? Nobody's debating any of that.
okay,
Why won't you
okay.
just
So
contend with the point?
these things are all related, right? So the father would be forcing the woman through her life, through her childhood, and so on, to learn how to take accountability and so on. Without that mentorship, it's just never going to happen. It's
Force them
very unlikely.
how? Wait, force them how? How are they really using force here?
So again, do you not agree that you have children, right?
Yes,
Okay, you have to use force on children on some level, right? Not violence, but force.
occasionally you have to use force.
Okay, so
Most of the time you use reason, and most of the time, now I'm not saying that there's not a time where force isn't appropriate. You say not violence, but of course, in this case, we're talking about things like spanking and physical correction. Let's not mince words here. We are. And occasionally, yes, you have to do that. Okay. But for the most part, that's not how you raise children. You don't, the threat of it is usually enough.
agree.
Um,
Yes, yeah. The threat of
but
it is also a
ultimately,
kind of force.
yeah, but here's the thing: they grow out of the threat of it. They grow out of the threat of it and into the accountability phase of things.
Right.
It's not feasible
They have to
anymore, really.
grow. They have to
At
grow
15,
into it.
yes,
It's not that they grow
men
into it.
and
They have to
women,
grow
both. Yes, they have to grow into accountability. But the thing is, by the time they're 15, 16, 17, you can hold them pretty fucking accountable for what it is that they're doing. Men and women both, girls and boys both. And no, there's not some separation of accountability. Your view actually lets women get away with murder, literally. And you should really change it because there's a massive amount of cognitive dissonance there that you now see. You see the cognitive dissonance. All you have to do is take that next, it's a painful step, but the next step of being like, look, there's a bit of cognitive dissonance here. It's very obvious to me now that I see that women actually do have to take some accountability and need to be treated with accountability without it being men's fault.
Yeah, I don't know. I fundamentally,
You don't know. I mean,
I
I look,
disagree with that on some level, and here's why. Again,
because
I
it's
would say
cognitive
that
dissonance, bro.
no, no, no.
Cognitive dissonance.
Men are forced by the world. Whether so, I grew up without a father, right? Raised by a single mother. I'm sure you're gonna laugh at that or think it's funny or whatever. But like, it
I
took me
don't
a
think it's
very
funny. I don't wait. I don't think it's funny.
it
And you
took
know
me a
what?
very
I don't beat up. I don't beat up. I get this bad rep like I beat up on single moms. I don't. My whole the entirety of my position on this is that it's optimal to try to move away from that conditional, meaning you shouldn't purposely make yourself a single mom if you can ever possibly avoid it. Everything should be tried before you go down that road.
Yep. I would also say that being raised by a single mother is almost a kind of child abuse, like necessarily. Um, there's a way in which that's true. It might be hyperbole on some level, but there's a way in which that's very
Yeah,
much true.
but the point here is like, look, I'm not talking about all of the conditionals which might make up a person. It's so many that we can't even ever get into all of them. The point here, though, is to get right to the heart and the core of what we're talking about. You said that I made a contradiction when it came to accountability and force doctrine, and I was able to capably demonstrate not only is that incorrect, but you agree with my position that it's incorrect. So why don't you just change your position? You can just change your position. Nobody's going to beat up on you about it. Oh, gee, Andrew, who's debated 1,000 fucking people and changed tens of thousands of people's minds, millions of people's minds, maybe, right? Also changed your mind on this one thing, which made you a stronger person. You can just concede that point. It's okay.
Yeah, but
But you're not
I
going
just
to.
no, I'm not. And again, like I'm trying to explain
I'm
why,
not.
right?
Okay.
I'm really
All
trying to
right.
explain why. Because again, to bring it all the way back to what started this conversation, right?
Yeah.
I also had you agree with a lot of the points that I made, right? So it's not just like every single fucking point went to you and you didn't concede anything to me. That's not what happened here at all.
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't I concede points that were never in contention?
Fundamentally, right? My position here is that men in general should be the leaders. Does that mean that women have absolutely no accountability? No. But I would
No,
argue
you
that
said
in
that they
general,
have half the accountability.
at a societal level, men
Yeah.
have much more accountability than women. And I think we agree on this.
No, I don't. We don't agree on this. I don't think. I think that
Bro,
there's
forced doctrine is nonsense if
if
that's
you
not true.
we just went through how that's not the case. But you know what? I'm willing actually to just go through it again. I'll actually go through this as many times as you need me to break your cognitive dissonance because that's the kind of good sport that I am about things. Because after I finally break you of this stupid shit, I'm hoping that you'll back me up on it. So let's go through it again. How is it that force doctrine isn't true if women have equal accountability? Go ahead.
Okay, so forced doctrine, my understanding, right, is that forced doctrine is that all of the rights and privileges that women have are essentially uh, granted by the dispensation of men, right?
But yeah, so it's appealed to. They're appealed to men for those things. Yes.
Right. So they appeal to men, and then men either give them what they want or not, right?
Yeah, or do nothing.
Right.
They have a neutral
So
stance.
if we, if we, for example, so just this is going to be kind of a silly example, right? But if we let some dumb blonde be the CEO of Cracker Barrel, and she decides to do to spend $1 billion on some retarded rebrand, right? It's
Mm.
actually like it's not necessarily her fault. It's the men who gave her that position and allowed her to piss away $1 billion on nonsense.
Yeah, so we'll strike right at the heart of the disagreement again. So let's see if we can separate these two concepts. The concept of force, which is the critical part of force doctrine, right? And the idea of accountability, which is a critical part of whatever the fuck it is that you're talking about. Your idea here is just this. Let's say that we had two different groups of men. One group of men is one third the strength of the other group of men. Okay, they're like they're men, but they just have one third of the strength. Okay, like they're little Asians or something, and they're dealing with Nordic people. Okay, and they're all living together. They're all living together, and the one third of weaker men go to the stronger men, and they're like, "Hey, man, we want to build this fucking castle over here, and that's what we're gonna do." And the other ones are like, "Okay, go ahead." And then they go and they build the castle, and it falls down on them, and it kills them all. By your logic, those men, the ones who are much stronger than the other ones, are somehow responsible for this. Why?
As so, are they the leaders of these other men, or they're just? I mean, if they're asking them for permission, it's fair to say that
Well,
the stronger
well,
men are the
men.
leaders, right?
Well, hang on. When you're talking about leadership of women, you're talking about it on an individualized level, not a collective level. Like you're not the leader of my wife. I'm the leader of my wife, not you. Right? You agree with that?
I agree with that, but in general, right? You would
Okay.
like to see.
Yeah.
Hang on, hang on, hang
But
on. One
yeah.
more thing, real quick. In general,
Go ahead.
I think that you would like to see a world in which the husband is, in general, the leader of his relationship. In general, right? So
Yeah.
even though
But men.
I'm not the leader
Yeah.
of your
But
wife, you would want me to be the leader of my wife, obviously, right?
yes, of course. But that would have nothing to do then with collective authority, which is what we're talking about. And men work within a hierarchy, a collective hierarchy. So, under the degree of force doctrine is talking about this hierarchy, especially with men. Your view for accountability is just that because women are physically weaker and have to appeal to the stronger sex for their rights, they have no accountability. But the
They have
problem with
much
this
less
logic,
accountability.
yeah, but the problem with this logic is why can't we just apply it to weaker men?
We should, yeah, we absolutely should. Yeah,
So this would also just entail then that the stronger the man is, the more accountability he has, and the weaker a man is, the less accountability he has. Do you see
in
how that
general,
has nothing to do? That has nothing to do with force doctrine, dude.
so
Do you see?
again,
Do you now understand how that has nothing to do with force doctrine at all?
I, we went over this before, and I'm gonna in good faith, I'm gonna concede the point, and I'm gonna say that that accountability has nothing to do with force doctrine. But again, I'm
Well,
going back.
there can be an olive branch, like there can be overlap, sure, with accountability and force doctrine, but fundamentally, the descriptive of force doctrine has nothing at all to do with accountability, or else all you would be doing is setting men in a hierarchy where if a man who's one third of the strength of another man kills a person, they should also get half the sentence.
Would you would you tell your
Well, wait,
wife
is that hang on? Is that the case?
would you tell your
That if a
wife to
man
change the
is that
alternator in
the
your car?
case? Answer the question and then ask the question.
Would you
Is
tell
that the
your wife?
case?
Would you
Oh
give your
man, you're not answering. Answer, then I'll answer.
Okay,
If
I'm
it's the
sorry.
case that a man who's one third of the strength of another one does the exact same crime, should he get the same punishment?
Yes, he should get the same punishment.
Yeah. So then the idea that
But
because
that is
that
not
man,
what
hang
we
on.
that is not what we
Yeah,
see in
so
practice.
then
In practice, we
yeah,
see
but
that
it is,
powerful men are not held
it is what
accountable.
we see in practice. We see that there's a collectivization within a hierarchy, and that men are all held to the same standard, regardless of their physical strength, even if they're as weak as women.
Men are
And so
not
that's
held to the
what
same standard. Men are not held to the same standard. Let me
they're not.
let me give
Wait, they're
you a
not
quick.
held to the same standard as men, other men? Yes, they are.
How
What
about
do you mean?
no. How about let's take the example of Kyle Rittenhouse, who defended
Okay.
himself from a fucking pedophile, a child abuser, and an armed robber, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
and then it was obvious self-defense, right? And then he had to go through this whole trial, got charged with I can't remember whether it was capital murder or not, but nonetheless he got charged with murder, I think, and he was facing a tremendous amount of time in jail, right?
Yeah.
He should have had no accountability for that, literally zero. And men who were weaker than him, right, like scumbags, that fucking prosecutor was a real piece of shit, um, tried to force him to be accountable for doing nothing wrong, right? And this kind of shit happens
So
all the time.
what you're saying is that a collective of men were able to, even if they were weaker than stronger men, because they collectivized, they were able to actualize utilizing force, their will on those men.
That is what we see in practice, yes.
Then that would be the descriptive of force doctrine. You see how that works?
I do. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
agree.
great. And do you understand though the separation there with accountability that you're talking about has to do with ideology, not with force doctrine itself, which is a descriptor for how it functionally works with force, but isn't giving you oughts for how you should ideologically apply it.
Right, yeah. I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well then,
basically what
well
you're
then, well
saying is that you
then, well
cannot
then
derive
the
an ought from an is, and this is like basic philosophy, right?
well, that would be Hume that you're appealing to there. But yes, it is true that you usually can't make the leap from is to ought. There may be some slight cases where that's possible philosophically, but yes, generally, I'm just applying the descriptor here. But if the
So,
descriptor itself, the descriptor itself of force doctrine is true, we agree it's true. One thing that we can apply with the descriptor is the equalization of standards. So if this is the case, can women collectivize to use force in the same way? The answer is no, thus proving force doctrine. So here we come down to the wire of what we're talking about, which is accountability. And accountability, I think, is an ought, not just a descriptive for what is. So that's where we have an
okay.
ideological distinction.
Yeah, that's actually where we're disagreeing. Okay, and honestly, that's fair, and I think that's a place where reasonable minds could differ. No?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, do you think people ought to be accountable?
Well, so here's the thing, right? And I
Well, hang
and
on.
I'm voting
Answer first with yeah. That's not loaded.
no,
Just
no.
yes or no. You don't think
Honestly,
people ought to be accountable?
no, not necessarily. Not
Oh,
necessarily.
okay.
Maybe, but
Okay.
not necessarily.
All right. I mean, I do
Why
think people ought to be.
why ought they why ought they be held accountable, and who gets to decide?
well, I would make a simple consequentialist argument here that that people ought be accountable for the things that they do because it makes for a much better society.
Okay, but that's you're begging the question though. Like,
How's that begging the question? Do you know what begging the question means? Because that's not what it means. Begging the question would be if I inserted the conclusion into the question, which I didn't. I
well,
just said
yeah,
that
you
it
did,
makes
you
for
did. You said it's a better
where
society. It makes for a better society. Well, why
did
does it
I
make for a better
hang
society?
on, bro? Did I ask you a question? No, I made a declarative statement, so I can't be begging the question here.
Begging the question is the result of a declarative statement. So, for example, here's what begging the
Wait a
question
second. Hang on. Pull up begging the question, and then tell me how I beg the question. I can't wait to hear this. You asked me, what is your reasonable groundation or grounding for this? And I said, I would just say it makes for a better society. That way I can at least compel you to the worldview because that's what you're looking for, better society, right? So tell me how that's begging the question. Go ahead.
is.
Read the
So,
definition for begging the question. Read it. Read
all right,
it. Actually
all right.
read it.
Let me look it up. Just give me a second.
Go ahead.
Type of fallacy where a proposition is assumed as a premise, which itself needs a proof directly and entails the conclusion. And
Okay,
direct.
so it entails, so yeah,
So,
so it entails
so
the
let me
conclusion from
explain.
the proposition. So the answering of a question is not propositional, and it's not asking or it's not entailing a conclusion to a proposition
Did
in the
did
proposition itself because I'm
did
answering the question.
did did the definition that I read of begging the question, did it specify that it needs to be contained within a question? No. Let me read it for you
No,
again.
no, it said a
Let me
proposition,
read
a
it for you again.
proposition. I said
Begging the
answering a
question.
question.
Type
I said
type of
when I'm
fallacy
answering, yeah.
where a
Mhm.
proposition is assumed as a
Proposition.
premise, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
a better society comes from accountability, right? That's what you said. And I said that's begging the question because your
No, no, no,
proposition
no.
is
You
assumed as a
asked
premise.
me. No, stop, bro. I didn't give you a proposition. You asked me a question. Do you see the difference there?
Your answer was a proposition, right? Like
No, a
any
proposition, a
any
proposition.
declarative statement has a proposition.
Oh my God. Listen, here, we're going to end this really quickly and it's going to go real bad for you. Look up what a proposition is. Look it up. Read it. Read what a proposition is. Read it.
A plan suggested for acceptance, a proposal, a matter to be dealt with,
No,
an
no, no.
offer.
Philosophical proposition.
This is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The term
Okay.
proposition has broad use in contemporary philosophy. It is used to
Mhm.
refer to some or all of the following: the primary bearers of truth value, the objects
Yep.
of belief, and other propositional attitudes, the result of that causes, and the meanings of sentences.
Hmm. The
So
proposition has to be, do you see the key part there? Proposition has to be what though? Does a proposition have to be true or false?
is used to refer to some or all of the following: the primary
Hmm.
bearers of truth value, the objects of belief, and other, quote, propositional attitudes, end quote, i.e., what is believed, doubted, etc.
Does a proposition have to be true or false?
Doesn't specify in the definition.
Okay, well, I'll help you. Yes, a proposition must be true or false. Answering the question is not a proposition.
That is
That's
so.
not a
So you have a
it's not.
proprietary definition then, because I'm
No, it's
looking at
not
the
proprietary.
Stanford. Yeah, it's the I'm looking at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It
Here,
doesn't say
just
anything.
Google. Here, I'll help you out. Google. Does a proposition have to be true or false? Just Google it. Just
Oh my
Google it and tell
god.
me the first thing that pops up. No, do it. Does a proposition have to be true or false? Tell me the first thing it says.
Does a proposition have to be true? Oh, sorry. Does
True or false?
proposition truth value? Yes, a proposition must be either true or false, but not both.
Oh, so it's not proprietary. It's not a proprietary definition. It has to be either true or false. That's why it can't be question begging here. I'm answering a question. It's not question begging. It's the opposite.
Okay, I was wrong. I concede.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, I'm just explaining to you why it's not begging the question and why it is that I'm trying to express to you this idea of when you ask me on the ought side of things, why ought why ought people take accountability? I say, well, I think it makes for a better society, right? That's not propositional.
So here's where I would argue with you.
Okay.
People ought to take accountability, sure, but they don't. Like we don't live in the world where people do what they ought to do, right? And so
Yeah, that's right.
we have to accept the world in which we were born in. And in
Well,
this, not
no, we don't.
wait, hang on. If we want to change it, we at least have to understand what it is now, right? That doesn't necessarily mean
Sure,
that we
sure, yes.
um
So
that we condone it,
descriptively,
right?
so
But we
descriptively, we agree that right now people don't take accountability as much as they should, and that's bad.
we agree, but I don't think that that's going to change it.
Okay, perfect. So then we've made a moral claim now, which is an ought, that when people don't take enough accountability, that's bad. So the descriptor of force doctrine, which is a descriptor which has nothing to do with the ought, that people should take more accountability. Do you see how they're separate now? Do you get it now?
No, I agree that they're separate, and I never said that they were the same, right? What I have always been claiming is that they are on some level very deeply related. Like the notion of force because people don't take accountability, they often have to be forced to if you want the better society that you're talking about, right?
All ought claims, bro.
Pardon me?
All ought claims. You see how they're separate from the descriptor?
Yeah. They are separate, right? But
Yeah. So then, so
just
then,
just
so then
because
maybe
things
you
are
can just make
separate
this
doesn't mean that
last.
they're not related.
Well, okay, yes, I agree that there's a relational aspect, but I
So
think
like
with that we can
so for
just you
example,
just make
right?
the so I think you can just make the concession here then
So
that
so for example,
that
right?
hang on, I think you can just make the concession here then, now that we've established this, that the descriptive claim of force doctrine has nothing to do with the ought claims of accountability, right?
No, that's not necessarily the case. And let me give you a great
Oh,
example.
okay,
Uh,
can't wait.
the concept of a man, right, and then the notion of
Hmm.
masculinity. These are separate but related concepts, right? Not
Yeah,
every man has masculinity, but only men can have masculinity, right? And so, in a similar way, um,
wrong.
in a-
That's wrong. No, that's totally incorrect. So you're saying that
how
women can't be masculine?
I've never seen it. I don't know. Have you?
What? You've never seen so you've never seen masculine looking women or women that you would attribute masculine virtues to?
I've seen masculine looking women, but every time, but their behavior is always
Ah, there we
a
go.
weird caricature of
Yeah,
masculinity, right?
gotcha.
It's like performative.
But you've seen masculine women. There we
No,
go.
I've
So
seen women who appear masculine, but that's not what masculinity
okay,
is.
I'm gonna teach you something here that's really important, and you're gonna be able to use this as a weapon in the future. So you should thank me for teaching this to you. I'm gonna ask you a question, and I guarantee you're not gonna be able to answer it. But then I'm gonna tell you what the answer is, and you're gonna agree, and then you're gonna understand the point. So it's gonna work in sequence like this. Watch. What is masculine? What does that mean?
um, the qualities of
Exactly.
a mature adult human male.
Okay. So what are those?
Uh, Leadership. Um,
So women can't exercise leadership,
Not well. No, women definitely
but
can
they
exercise
can.
leadership over
Yeah,
men,
but they
right?
can't. They
Your
can't.
Bible tells you that women should not ever have leadership over men. Does it not?
Authority,
Right. Yeah.
not
What's the
leadership.
difference?
Well,
Yeah.
for instance, like if a woman is leading me through a dark tunnel with a candle, I think that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. She's been there before, right? Okay. So authority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fine.
So hang on. So authority, but the thing is like women can clearly exercise leadership even over other women. They can exercise it over children, right?
Yep.
So leadership is not distinctly masculine, right? What else?
um. Yeah. I mean, look again. If you want to make everything black and white, right? You're gonna be able to do so sometimes.
I'm not making everything black and white. I'm just asking you what masculine is. What is it? You
Okay.
remember
Fine.
I
You
told
know
you you
what?
wouldn't be able to.
I'm.
Remember I told you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
answer
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
question, and then I'd give you the answer, and then
I
you would
was
agree.
just
Now I'm going to give you the answer, and I'm going to watch
okay.
you agree. So here's the
Okay.
answer. So masculinity and femininity can't be chopped up through simple traits alone. They have to be chopped up by virtues. And the way that you can distinguish these virtues between the masculine and the feminine, and again, you can use this as a weapon, I promise, is you can say any one of these virtues, which is a failure via the sex, which leads to catastrophe over the other sex, is what we would consider feminine or masculine virtues. So, an example of this: do you think it would be catastrophic if men decided tomorrow to have no more courage? If there was no more courage in men tomorrow, would that be catastrophic? Yes, right?
Indeterminate.
It would be it would be fucking catastrophic if men lost courage tomorrow, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Would it be less catastrophic if women did?
Of course. Yeah, and you're proving
Yeah,
my point. You're proving
so
my
then hang
fucking
on.
point.
So then we would attribute here that this is a shared courage is shared between men and women, but the reason we would make it a masculine virtue over a feminine virtue is because if it fails, the catastrophe to society is much worse if it fails on one side or the other, right?
Yes, and that's also why I was saying that one side or the other is necessarily required to have more accountability. Because of what
No,
you just said.
no, no. Accountability would be an account. It would be an accounting of those masculine or feminine virtues. They would actually need equal accountability, maybe even more accountability on the woman's side, depending on the virtues, depending on what we would decide virtues are. Like chastity, for instance. If chastity fails in men, not nearly as bad as if chastity fails in women. That's why it's a feminine virtue, right? This is how we can distinguish between masculine and feminine, and nobody will ever be able to trap you on that again, will they? Didn't I just give you an excellent weapon, just like I promised?
It is a good weapon, and I definitely will steal
Yes, yes, yes. I gave you an excellent weapon. I predicted exactly how that entire exchange would go, and it went exactly that way. So I'm just explaining to you, like, look, I'm not the enemy. I'm just trying to express to you, how you can even defend yourself in these fucking, in these exchanges, because you can't really even convey what masculine and feminine was until right this second. You knew it, like you did know it intuitively, and I get that. I get that men and women know kind of intuitively, but it's really hard to put it into words, isn't it?
So no, it's actually not. I thought about it a little bit more.
No, it's
So
not.
one of the main things about
Uh,
masculinity is orientation towards the world, and specifically orientation towards acting, towards you know having an actual impact on the physical world. This is why, for example, men are much like little boys are much more interested in Tonka trucks and fucking train sets and race cars and stuff like that, right? Men are much more oriented towards building things in the actual physical world, and women are much more oriented toward building relationships and so on. They're much more relational, right? So that's a huge difference between the masculine and the feminine, right? Also, I would argue
no,
that that,
no,
that
no, bro,
it
bro.
is.
That's listen. You're not, because these aren't attributed as virtues. They're still shared. Women have a huge effect on the world, right? They have a
Not
huge effect on the world. They have children, right, which has a massive material effect on the world. They also they keep the undercurrent flowing, and if you know what that means, the undercurrent, it's like the menial tasks, things like this. They keep all of that flowing as well. That's a huge impact on the world in a different way. But what makes a woman feminine and what makes a man masculine, if all the traits are shared, if courage is shared, and it is, if every trait you can name is shared, and they all are, then we have to have some way to reduce them between men and women for masculine and feminine. So how do we do that other than virtues? How could we even do that?
all right. So you mentioned chastity as a feminine virtue, right? And
Hmm.
what would you say specifically are the masculine virtues? Like, if you could give me, I don't know, three or four of them, maybe.
Well, I would probably do things like courage would be a masculine virtue. Strength would be a masculine virtue. Character would be a masculine virtue. You want a fourth one? Let's see, a good fourth virtue that I would say would be a male-specific virtue. Protection. I would say protection would be another virtue. Now, I'm not giving you cardinal virtues here. I'm giving you what I would call streamline virtues that I think that you would agree if they failed in men versus women, it would be far more catastrophic.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That actually is fair. Your definition makes good sense. I think
Yeah.
I just want to I want to make sure that I
And
understand.
now I have given you a fucking Uzi and a land full of handguns, and you should say thanks, Andrew. That was very kind of you to do, because I'm going to weaponize it against all of my enemies and never give you any credit. To which I say that's fine. That's fine, bro.
Um, you're a real dick. You know that. Like you
I
really
yeah,
even when you're
I
being
know,
nice. You're a dick.
but isn't it kind of earned? It's a little bit earned, right? I put in the work to be this big of a dick. I put in the work.
That
Very
that's
masculine,
honestly
very
and,
masculine
and
trait. by the way.
You know what? I'm actually gonna give you an olive branch here, and I'm gonna say that, in general, I don't necessarily like assholes, but if you're competent, then you have the right to be an asshole. Like if you actually really like know what you're talking about, you can get away with it, and it's fun. Ask me how I
Well,
know.
look, I just got a feeling I'm going to see you in spaces in the coming weeks, man, machine gunning people down with virtues, and I'm going to be laughing my ass off. And I'll never say a word, right? I'll never say a word, but I'll just know that it's one more guy out there gunning these fucking pieces of shit down. And it makes me so happy. But anyway, go ahead with where you were going.
No, that's all. I honestly, I think we're done. You know, even though it was contentious in certain places, I still all right. Fundamentally, the thing that I still think that we might disagree on, and I think my perception at least, and I looked at the comments very briefly, and there were a few people who were kind of accusing me of being gynocentric, and I actually am trying to be the opposite of that on some level, right? What I'm
Yeah,
really
but
saying
do you understand
is,
why they're saying that? Why they're saying
yeah,
gynocentrism?
yeah, I totally get it. I see why they're saying that for sure. But it's just that my perception is this. A huge part of the reason why Western society is in decline, right, over the last 100 years, and I think you would agree with me on that, um, has to do with the fact that men have not been taking enough accountability, right? I'm not necessarily.
Mm, I disagree. I think it's the opposite.
You think that, okay, right, because men have given women too much power.
No. So here's the thing. Did you give women any power?
No, no, but
Who do
like
you
my
know who
or
did? Who do you know who
I don't
did?
know. I don't know anyone who did, but what I do know is that in 1919, the Congress was 100% male, and now it's not, right?
Yeah. What changed?
Well, the 19th Amendment changed.
Yeah. And did you know that when women were able to vote on their right to vote, they voted against it? Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah. So I don't understand. I thought that these women were dumb children, but why did they vote? Why did they vote against the 19th Amendment? You want to know one of the primary reasons why? Because they didn't want to have to take the accountability for them being a political arm. They didn't want it.
Fucking exactly. And then men, right, essentially forced them to have the right to vote, right? Based on
No,
what,
no,
based
no,
on
no,
what,
no, no,
not
no.
force them, but like,
Men didn't force them. Not only did they not force them, right? But what ended up happening was a series of special interest feminist groups pushed this through. So ultimately, though,
who
they thought
allowed
that
that
they
to
had,
happen? So
yeah, women
feminists
thought that
pushed it
they,
through, but men let it happen.
yeah,
Because
but
if
you're
they
at the
didn't let it
mercy,
happen, it could not
you're
have
at the
happened.
mercy, bro, you're at the mercy of a system which is designed to follow a process. Very masculine, by the way, right? It's designed to follow a process, and the process was followed. In this case, we were out, our side was outmaneuvered. But the question here, the confounding question, really comes down to this idea of like, look, why is it that if you think women shouldn't be held to account, did women think they should be held to account? So much so that they thought they had the moral high ground and didn't want to become political cogs. You should hold women to account for the things that they do, man. And the reason that you're adamant about this is because you've been fed a line of sewing circle Christian garbage. You've been fed the opposite line. Oh, and here I can even tell you the argument that convinced you. Oh, yeah? Well, if men are the ones who are supposed to be in charge, then things logically have to be all of their fault. Because how could it not be their fault if they're the ones who are supposed to be in charge? But you don't realize that buried in there is a series of presentism fallacies and nonsense that makes no fucking sense at all, right? To be in charge, if we both really have roles, one has a submittal role and one has the authority role. But an authority role means nothing if there's no submittal role. How can you be a lieutenant over a fucking squad of soldiers that rejects your authority? You can't. It's not possible. But this idea then is pivoted to, that, well, they're children like, and they're kind of stupid, and so they shouldn't have any accountability, and it should just lay on men. And that's fucking stupid. Is it really your position that your mom has no accountability or half the accountability that you do? Doesn't that sound retarded when you say it out loud?
I mean, look, it does sound retarded, but the reality of the situation is that I haven't spoke to my mom in like 15 years because she's incapable of taking any kind of accountability for her action, right? So
No,
like
no, no, but
she
you see what you're
she
doing?
doesn't.
You're holding her accountable. That's the whole point.
No. I'm just removing my attention, which isn't forcing accountability, and it's not forcing us.
Oh,
That's
okay.
fucking stupid.
Let's go with this then. Let's say you're not holding your mom accountable, right? By removing yourself from her presence. Then why are you removing yourself from her presence?
Just because I don't want to deal with her shit.
Right. And does that have an effect on her? Like, are
Um,
there ultimatums that are put in place? Are there ultimatums put in place? Like, mom, if you change, we can have maybe a relationship now?
no, no ultimatum. No,
No?
I told her she's dead to me. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
dead to me.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you hold her accountable. I mean, I wouldn't tell a person who had no accountability that they were dead to me. What would be the point? They're not even accountable for what they do.
So, so is that actually, if the person refuses to accept the accountability, right? Then they're
Yep.
not being
Yep.
held accountable, and she refuses to accept accountability.
Well, refusing to accept accountability and being held accountable, again, two different concepts, right?
Again, deeply related, right? In the same way that masculinity is related to the concept of being a male, right? Femininity is
But dude,
related.
I don't know what just happened to your mic, but it's giving all of us ear aids.
Yeah, my bad. It's also 1 o'clock
There
in
you
the
go.
yeah.
Oh, well, now it's even worse because there's an echo.
Oh, well, let's call it here anyway. Look, I really appreciate the dialogue, Andrew. I appreciate the debate. It's 1 o'clock in the morning for me, and I'm about ready to go to bed anyway.
I bet those glasses make you see better.